This evening, you travel to Narnia during the 100-year winter. In the winter of the Pevensies' wartime evacuation, Lucy steps through an old wardrobe in a country house and finds a lamppost standing among snow-covered trees. This is Narnia under Jadis, the White Witch, where winter has lasted for 100 years and the quiet work of resistance has begun. London, 1939. Before dawn, you are standing beside a railway platform where coal smoke drifts beneath the station roof. Blackout curtains hang across the waiting room windows, folded and heavy, while railway soot settles upon the polished wooden benches. Around you, London is quieter than usual, though the city never quite becomes still. Somewhere beyond the station walls, a lorry groans along a darkened street. Farther away, a siren gives a brief, uncertain cry, then fades among the buildings. Cold air enters whenever the carriage doors open, carrying the sharp smell of iron, rain, and coal. You feel it move across your face. Lamps burn low beneath their shades, and the children's luggage rests in a careful row beside their coats. Morning has not yet brightened. The platform seems suspended between night and departure. You are traveling with Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey, 4 children being sent away from wartime London towards the quiet countryside. Peter is the eldest Pevensey child, tall enough to appear almost grown, when he stands beside the carriage door. Susan, the second eldest, keeps watch over Lucy's small case and the folded labels tied to their belongings. Edmund is younger than Susan and older than Lucy, and his expression is already clouded with reluctant suspicion. Lucy presses her hands against the cold glass and looks back towards the station. The train waits beneath a canopy of soot-darkened beams. Britain has declared war on Germany on 3 September 1939, and large-scale child evacuations from London have begun. The 4 children are leaving the familiar streets behind. The carriage smells of damp wool, leather straps, and yesterday's smoke. You sit near the window, where the glass trembles softly within its frame. Beyond it, the platform slides away by degrees. A porter lifts one hand. A signal changes from red to green. The engine begins its slow work, drawing the carriages forward through the darkness. London passes in fragments. Brick walls, narrow alleys, covered windows, and rows of houses with blackout curtains drawn across every room. At night, households must hide their lights so enemy aircraft will have fewer visible targets. Even now, the covered windows make the streets seem blind. Coal smoke folds over the rooftops, and railway soot gathers in the corners of the glass. During the years from 1939 to 1941, German bombing of London will form part of the historical background to the Pevensies' removal from the city. You move with the train through districts where familiar streets thin into warehouses and yards. Peter sits upright, listening whenever the wheels cross a junction. Susan has arranged the tickets, sandwiches, and a small flask of tea upon her lap. Edmund studies the dark window, pretending that the journey has not troubled him. Lucy watches the reflections of all 4 faces floating over the night. Under the carriage lamps, Peter's hair appears brown, Susan's ribbon is pale, and Edmund's eyes look darker than usual. Lucy's face is turned towards the countryside, although the countryside has not yet appeared. The train rocks steadily beneath you, its motion becoming almost comforting. It carries everyone forward, whether or not anyone feels ready. By 1940, Britain has introduced rationing, and controlled supplies of food, clothing, fuel, and coal have become part of ordinary household life. You notice the evidence in small details rather than announcements. The sandwiches are thinly cut. The children's coats have been brushed, mended, and carefully folded. The flask is warm but not full. A paper parcel contains a little fruit, wrapped as though each piece matters. Outside, railway sidings glimmer with frost. A row of lamps stands beside the tracks, each one blurred by mist. The carriage window grows colder around its edges. When Lucy leans against it, her breath leaves a pale mark that quickly disappears. The rhythm of the wheels moves beneath every thought, clack over rail, clack into darkness. The smell of coal smoke follows the train like a dark, patient shadow. The train carries Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy away from London because the city has become dangerous, uncertain, and difficult to protect. Peter receives the responsibility without being asked. He checks the luggage whenever the carriage slows, then looks towards Susan for confirmation. Susan makes certain that Lucy's scarf remains tied and that Edmund has not left his gloves beneath the seat. Edmund resents the attention, though the warmth of his gloves is welcome. Lucy asks where the countryside begins, and Susan tells her that they will know when the buildings become fewer. You watch the 4 children listening to the railway's changing voice. London's close echo gives way to open stretches of track. The darkness outside appears broader. The train crosses fields hidden beneath mist. Far away, a dog barks once, and then the sound is gone. The countryside receives the train with wet hedges, bare branches, and a morning sky the color of unpolished silver. You step down onto a smaller platform where the air tastes cleaner, though coal smoke still hangs above the rails. A station master raises his lantern. Beyond him, a waiting car stands beside a narrow road. The children gather their luggage. Peter lifts the largest case. Susan takes Lucy's hand. Edmund looks towards the empty platform, searching for signs of the arrangement that has carried them here. No one from the city is visible. The station buildings are low and whitewashed, their windows dark. Rain beads upon the luggage handles and gathers along the children's shoulders. The train begins to leave. Its red rear lamp grows smaller. For a while, you can still hear the wheels. Then the countryside becomes quiet. The 4 children are sent to stay with an unnamed elderly professor in the countryside, in a house set beyond fields and wooded lanes. You travel along a road bordered by dripping hedges, while the driver's tires press softly into the mud. The professor's house appears only after a bend. It stands large and old beneath spreading trees, with gables, chimneys, and windows set at different heights. Rain darkens the stonework. Ivy climbs one wall and disappears beneath the roof. A gravel drive curves towards a broad front entrance. Behind the house, the land rises into a wood. In front, the fields lie open and pale. The place seems too large for 4 children and too quiet for London. Wind moves through the branches without disturbing the house. Somewhere inside, a clock marks the hour. The professor's house is full of rooms, corridors, staircases, and hiding places, with uncertain rules that seem to alter according to whoever is present. Peter enters first, carrying the largest case through a hall lined with dark wood. Susan follows with Lucy, while Edmund pauses beneath a high coat stand. The professor is elderly, bearded, and absent for the moment, though his presence seems to linger in the furniture and books. A housekeeper gives brief instructions, then disappears towards the kitchen. You hear doors closing in distant parts of the building. The children are told which rooms belong to them, which are private, and which passages should not be used. The boundaries are not entirely clear. There are too many doors. Some open onto cupboards. Others lead to empty bedrooms. One corridor ends beside a narrow stairway that rises into shadow. The floors are polished but uneven, and the wood gives small sounds beneath your feet. In the hall, the smell of beeswax mingles with damp coats and old paper. Moth-soft fabric hangs inside a cupboard, its fibers brushing against your sleeve as you pass. A faint draught travels beneath the doors. The windows look towards wet fields, where rain darkens the grass in long horizontal bands. The house absorbs daylight and returns it slowly. In one room, a fire burns behind a brass guard. In another, the grate is cold. You hear water moving through pipes, then the soft settling of walls. The air is not frightening. It is simply unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things seem larger after sunset. The professor is often away or occupied, and Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy soon discover that the house provides long hours for exploration. You see the children begin with caution, then continue with growing confidence. Peter examines the library, where ladders lean against shelves and maps cover one wall. Susan discovers a glass-roofed passage filled with faded plants. Edmund finds a room containing broken instruments and a cabinet of stones. Lucy counts the doors along the western corridor, but loses track before reaching the end. The professor remains occupied with papers, visitors, and distant conversations. Sometimes his voice rises from the library. Sometimes he is nowhere in sight. The children learn to move quietly past his study. They learn which stair treads creak and where afternoon light rests upon the floor. Beyond the windows, weather changes slowly over the fields. Rain becomes mist, and mist becomes a pale evening. The hedges shine with water, while the trees hold their leaves in dark clusters. Inside, the house carries small domestic sounds. A kettle murmurs. A coal settles in the grate. A brush moves across a passage floor. When evening comes, blackout curtains are drawn across the windows, and each room closes upon its own dim warmth. The darkness outside contains no visible road, distant town, or familiar London glow. The house remains surrounded by fields and woods. Its silence has depth. Its corridors seem to continue after the lamps have been extinguished. The children play hide-and-seek through the house, using the halls, spare bedrooms, cupboards, and long curtains as temporary shelters. Peter counts with his face against the library wall. Susan moves quickly, but her footsteps betray her upon the upper landing. Edmund chooses a place behind a folded screen, then changes it when he hears Peter approaching. Lucy slips away alone. You follow the quiet movement of a small figure through rooms where dust lies undisturbed. She passes a table covered with newspapers. She crosses beneath a portrait whose painted eyes seem to watch the corridor. A door stands open at the end of a passage. Beyond it waits a spare room. The room is almost empty, except for a large old wardrobe standing against the far wall. Dust rests upon the spare room's window ledge, and the grey light makes every surface appear soft and distant. The wardrobe is made of dark, polished wood, its doors marked by age and faint scratches. Its brass handle is cold beneath Lucy's fingers. When the door opens, the smell of wood rises from within. Behind it hang several coats, thick and formal, with collars worn smooth by time. The fabric is moth-soft and brushes lightly against your hands. Somewhere in the house, Peter calls Susan's name. A floorboard answers from the corridor. Lucy steps closer to the wardrobe. The room remains ordinary: dust, wood, cloth, and a thin line of daylight beneath the door. Lucy enters the wardrobe while Peter, Susan, and Edmund continue playing hide-and-seek elsewhere in the house. You move behind Lucy as the coats close around her shoulders. At first, the fabric presses gently against her face and hands. The smell of dust and polished wood remains close. She takes another step, expecting the wooden back to meet her knees, but it does not. The coats continue before her, hanging in a darkness that feels deeper than the wardrobe should contain. Their hems brush against her boots. A branch hidden among the cloth touches her cheek. Then the ordinary warmth of the room begins to fade. Cold air enters through the coats. Lucy stops. Behind her, the wardrobe door is no longer easy to see. The air changes so gently that you might first mistake it for a draft beneath a door. It is colder now, and cleaner, carrying the faint mineral scent of snow. The coats hang around you in layers of brown, grey, and faded black. Their fabric is soft against your shoulders. Beneath your feet, the floor feels less certain. The darkness has a different texture. It is open rather than enclosed. You hear no housekeeper, ticking clock, or distant call from Peter. A single drop of cold water touches your hand, followed by another. The smell of dust recedes. The smell of wood becomes faint. Snow begins to settle without a sound. The wardrobe opens into a different world rather than ending at its wooden back, and Lucy steps beyond the coats into Narnia's first quiet edge. You stand with Lucy in a dark wood beneath falling snow. The trees rise around you in tall, straight ranks, their branches holding white layers that soften every shape. The wardrobe and the professor's house are no longer visible. Behind you, there is only darkness between the trunks. Ahead, a single lamppost glows in the wood. Its light is warm and yellow, though the snow around it appears blue at the edges. The lamppost stands upon a small patch of open ground, its metal post rising from the white earth. Lucy looks towards it. She has entered Narnia without understanding how. Snow gathers upon Lucy's hair and shoulders, remaining there for several moments before sliding away. Cold air enters through the coat still clinging to her sleeves. It touches her fingers, cheeks, and the small space beneath her collar. Snow settles upon the branches without a sound. No wind moves through the wood. The lamppost hums faintly, almost too softly to hear. Its light touches one side of Lucy's face and leaves the other in shadow. Around you, trunks vanish into darkness. The forest smells of resin, frozen earth, and distant water. The quiet is complete, but it is not empty. Lucy remains beneath the lamppost, while the old house and the game of hide-and-seek recede beyond all ordinary distance. You can still imagine Peter counting in the library, Susan waiting behind a door, and Edmund searching the lower corridor. Yet those sounds belong to another place. Lucy turns once towards the darkness behind her. The wardrobe is impossibly far away, though only a few moments have passed. The house has become a memory of warmth, dust, polished wood, and shaded rooms. In front of Lucy, the lamppost marks a boundary. Beyond it, the snow-covered wood continues. Somewhere in that world, a path may lead between the trees. For now, she stands alone beneath the light. The war, the railway, and London seem distant. The scene is quiet enough for every small sensation to become distinct. Snow rests upon the ground like fine ash, though it is cold beneath Lucy's shoes. The lamppost's glass enclosure holds a steady glow. A branch releases its burden, and the snow falls softly into the darkness. Lucy's breath forms a pale cloud and disappears. The air smells of pine needles and frozen bark. Beneath the silence, there may be the smallest movement of branches, or perhaps only the slow settling of snow. The light does not flicker. The wood does not stir. You feel the cold along your hands and the soft weight of the night around your shoulders. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey belong to the ordinary world of wartime Britain, but Lucy has found a passage into Narnia. The first published account of that passage will not appear for many years. The book is completed by the end of March 1949, after years of thought, revision, and quiet work. When the manuscript reaches its readers, the story begins with 4 children, an old house, and a wardrobe that refuses to remain ordinary. The unnamed elderly professor stands at the center of the countryside setting, though his house holds more than his guests can understand. The Pevenseys remain shaped by their time. Their journey begins amid London's danger, rationing, blackouts, and the bombing that marked the years from 1939 to 1941. Around you, the snowy wood remains unchanged. The lamp burns in the darkness. The branches carry their white weight. Lucy's coat is damp with melting snow, and the cold gathers at the edges of her sleeves. There is no railway sound here. No coal smoke drifts between the trees. No blackout curtain moves across a window. Only the lamppost offers a small circle of warmth, while beyond it the wood rests beneath the falling snow. Silence stretches in every direction. The ground is pale. The air is clear. The dark trunks stand quietly around you. The first British edition is published by Geoffrey Blaise on 16 October 1950, and the story becomes the first published book in the 7-volume Chronicles of Narnia. You return in memory to the old house, where the other 3 children continue to search. Peter opens a cupboard and finds only blankets. Susan listens beside a staircase. Edmund crosses the library, where the fire has burned low. None of them sees the snow, the lamppost, or the dark forest beyond the coats. The professor is occupied elsewhere, perhaps among his books, perhaps behind the closed door of his study. The house continues its patient breathing. Its corridors retain the children's footsteps. Its rooms remain full of uncertain rules and concealed spaces. Somewhere a clock moves towards evening. The house grows softer as the afternoon fades. Polished wood reflects the last grey light. Moth-soft fabric hangs motionless in cupboards. The spare room waits with its dusty window and empty floor. Beyond the walls, snow may be beginning in the fields, though no one inside can yet see it. A coal fire settles into embers. The smell of smoke thins through the hall. Blackout curtains are drawn again as darkness gathers, their thick folds covering the windows. The house becomes a world of low lamps, quiet passages, and distant rooms. The wardrobe stands in the spare room, closed and still. Between 1950 and 1956, the 7 Narnia books appear one by one, carrying readers beyond the wardrobe into a wider country of forests, kingdoms, seas, and winter light. Yet the first movement remains small. Lucy crosses a room. She pushes open a wardrobe door. She moves through hanging coats. The wooden back is not there. The ordinary world loosens. Snow begins. A lamppost shines. Such changes arrive quietly without haste, while the house remains behind her in memory. Peter is still the eldest. Susan remains the second eldest. Edmund is still younger than Susan and older than Lucy. Their names stay close to the beginning, repeated softly through the rooms and across the years. Snow continues to fall, gathering upon the upper branches and rounding the roots of the trees. The lamppost gives little warmth to the air immediately around it, though the wider forest remains cold. Lucy stands beneath the light with her hands at her sides. Her breath comes slowly. The coats behind her are heavy and dark, and their smell has almost vanished. Somewhere within the trees, something may be moving. There is no need to follow it yet. The wood holds its distance. The lamp holds its circle. The snow falls quietly. Lucy is alone in Narnia now, with the house impossibly far away and the single lamppost glowing in the dark wood. The details of the journey fall quiet. The train is far behind, and London lies farther still. The old house rests somewhere beyond the coats. Lucy breathes as snow lies upon the ground. The lamppost shines while the trees stand close and still. Cold air moves through the branches, and the darkness remains gentle. The light continues to burn, and beneath it Lucy waits quietly in the snow. Snow settles softly upon the dark branches, resting along every twig in narrow white ridges. Beneath your boots, the ground gives with a quiet, wet softness, and the cold gathers around the metallic post, where the lamp burns with a steady yellow light. Snowflakes drift through that light, appearing for a moment before vanishing into the surrounding darkness. The trees stand close together, their trunks pale beneath the snow, while the higher branches hold a faint, bluish brightness from the winter sky. Nothing moves except the slow descent of the flakes and the small stir of Lucy's breath. The forest has no road, no fence, and no visible house. There is only the lamppost, the snow, and the hush lying between the trees. Lucy waits beneath the lamp, listening to the silence of Narnia. Then, from somewhere beyond the nearest trunks, comes a sound that does not belong to the forest. It is the soft crunch of footsteps pressing into fresh snow, uneven and hurried as they draw closer through the darkness. A figure appears beneath the branches, carrying an umbrella over his head and several parcels beneath one arm. He is not a man, although his shape initially seems almost human. His legs are those of a goat, his ears are pointed, and 2 small horns rise from his hair. He is a faun, and his name is Mr. Tumnus. The umbrella gathers a little white crown as he approaches, each flake resting briefly upon its dark fabric. The parcels are wrapped in brown paper, tied with string, and held carefully against his chest. His face carries a nervous expression, and his eyes glance repeatedly towards the trees behind him. When he sees Lucy standing by the lamppost, he stops so suddenly that one parcel slips beneath his elbow. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The lamplight shines upon the fawn's wet boots, the umbrella ribs, and the small cloud of vapor leaving his mouth. Lucy introduces herself, and Mr. Tumnus responds with startled politeness. He asks where she has come from, though his voice suggests that he already suspects the answer. She tells him that she entered through a wardrobe and has been looking for the way back to the spare room. The fawn listens with increasing wonder, because human children have not been seen in Narnia for a very long time. Around them, snow continues to fall through the lamplight. Mr. Tumnus shifts his parcels from one arm to the other, and the paper makes a faint, dry, rustling sound. The forest seems less empty now that another presence stands beside you. Snowflakes cling to the umbrella and slide down its edges in tiny silver threads. The nearest tree has a rough trunk, darkened by moisture, while the branches above carry a thick burden of white. From Mr. Tumnus's parcels comes the faint scent of paper, fruit, and something sweet. His hooves make shallow impressions in the snow, and Lucy's boots have left a narrow line leading back towards the wardrobe. The metallic chill around the lamppost remains sharp against the warm color of its flame. Beyond that small circle of light, Narnia waits in blue shadow. Mr. Tumnus tells Lucy that she should not remain alone in the forest. He says the weather is severe, although he does not explain why the winter has lasted so long. He speaks of a cave nearby, a comfortable place where she may rest and take tea before continuing her journey. His invitation is gentle, and the parcels seem to belong to an ordinary evening of household errands. Lucy accepts because the forest is cold and the cave sounds warm. Together they begin walking through the snow, with the fawn carrying his umbrella and Lucy following along the narrow path. As they move away from the lamp, the trees close around them. The yellow glow becomes a small, distant point between the trunks before disappearing altogether. Snow gathers upon Lucy's shoulders, melting where it touches her coat. The fawn's parcels knock softly against one another as he walks, and the umbrella creaks with each change of direction. His hooves sink deeply into the wet snow, leaving rounded marks beside the smaller prints made by Lucy's boots. At intervals, he looks back, as though expecting someone to emerge from the forest. The cold air smells of bark, frozen earth, and the clean, faint bitterness of snow. Mr. Tumnus leads Lucy to a cave hidden behind a bank of snow and evergreen branches. A small door has been fitted into the stone opening, with a brass handle, and a square window glowing warmly from within. The fawn produces a key, fumbles it once, and then opens the door. Firelight spills onto the snow, touching Lucy's boots with a soft amber color. Inside, the cave is neither wild nor empty. It is furnished as a small domestic dwelling, with a table, 2 chairs, a bed, shelves, cupboards, and a bright fire burning against the wall. The warmth inside the cave rises slowly around you, carrying the dry scent of burning wood and the richer smell of food. Firelight moves across the stone walls, brightening their uneven surfaces before retreating into the shallow hollows between them. A woven rug lies before the hearth, its fibers softened by long use. Copper vessels hang beside the fireplace, and a little clock rests upon a shelf among books and ornaments. The furniture is modest, but carefully arranged, as though the room has been prepared for quiet evenings. Outside, the snow remains cold and soundless. Within the cave, the fire gives a low, settling murmur. Mr. Tumnus removes his umbrella and places it near the door. He sets the parcels upon the table, then hurries about preparing supper for Lucy. The first thing he offers is tea, poured from a small brown pot into a cup with a painted rim. He brings sardines on toast, boiled eggs, and a cake whose icing has been slightly disturbed during its journey beneath the fawn's arm. Lucy eats, while the fire burns steadily beside her. The meal is strange, only because of the place in which it is served. The tea is warm, the toast is crisp, and the eggs are still faintly steaming. The scent of sardines and toasted bread settles into the cave, mingling with the sweetness of cake and the smoky fragrance of the logs. Steam curls above the teacup, carrying delicate warmth towards Lucy's face. The toast breaks with a small crack beneath her fingers, while the boiled eggs lie smooth and pale upon a ceramic plate. Firelight gleams upon the butter and touches the rim of the cup. The stone floor near the doorway remains damp from melting snow, and a few drops shine beneath the umbrella. Somewhere above, wind presses against the forest, but the cave holds its warmth close. During the meal, Mr. Tumnus tells Lucy about Narnia. He speaks of dryads and river gods, of beavers and talking animals, and of a country that was once brighter than this. He explains that the White Witch, also known as Jadis, has made it always winter in Narnia. Christmas never comes under her rule. The words are spoken quietly, and he glances towards the door after naming her. Lucy is troubled by the thought of a winter without Christmas, because the absence of that festival seems colder than the snow itself. The fire gives a gentle colour to Mr. Tumnus's face as he speaks. Shadows gather behind his horns and stretch across the cave wall, changing shape whenever a log collapses inward. The teapot grows cooler on the table, but its warmth remains in the cup between Lucy's hands. Outside the door, snowflakes land upon the threshold and melt into tiny dark marks. The air beyond the cave tastes of ice, while the room contains the softer sense of tea leaves, toasted bread, and cake. The little dwelling feels sheltered, though the name Jadis has entered it. Mr. Tumnus takes a flute from a drawer and sits beside the fire. He tells Lucy that he sometimes plays when the evenings are long. The instrument is small and pale, polished by repeated handling. He lifts it to his lips and begins a slow, reedy tune. The music is simple, yet it seems to carry great distance within it. Lucy listens as the melody moves through the cave, and the ordinary objects around her become softened by its sound. The faun's playing makes the strange country seem less threatening, even while winter presses heavily against the door. The flute sends a faint, reedy thread through the room, thin as smoke and nearly as delicate. Its notes rise above the whisper of the fire, then fall into the spaces between the stones. The melody seems to drift beneath the shelves and across the woven rug, touching the wooden table with quiet sadness. Snow continues to collect upon the roof, muting every sound beyond the cave. Lucy's teacup rests warm against her palms, and the last crumbs of sardines on toast remain upon the plate. Firelight trembles over the walls as the music continues. For a little while, Mr. Tumnus forgets his fear. He speaks to Lucy as though she were an ordinary guest, and she tells him about England, the railway, the countryside, and the large house belonging to the professor. The conversation carries them both away from the snowy forest. Yet the faun's face changes when he remembers how she arrived. He places the flute upon the table and lowers his head. At last, Mr. Tumnus confesses that he had been expected to report any human child he found in Narnia to the White Witch. The confession lies between them while the fire burns down into brighter coals. Mr. Tumnus explains that Jadis has servants throughout the country, and that those who disobey her may be punished severely. He had entered the snow intending to find Lucy, lead her to his cave, and send word of her presence. The parcels, the umbrella, the tea, and the cheerful domestic room now seem touched by another purpose. He is ashamed, and his voice grows unsteady. Lucy understands that the faun has been frightened into obedience. The cave grows quiet after the music stops. A coal breaks apart with a faint red gleam, releasing a brief shower of sparks. The shadows settle more firmly into the corners, while the warmth of the fire remains upon the nearest stones. The smell of the meal has faded, leaving only tea, smoke, and the clean dampness of snow near the door. Mr. Tumnus's flute lies beside the empty plate, its polished surface catching a narrow line of orange light. Lucy sits in the small room, listening to the silence that follows the last note. Lucy does not accuse Mr. Tumnus. She asks whether he truly means to send her to the witch, and the faun tells her that he no longer can. He has spoken with her, heard her describe her home, and discovered that she is not the dangerous creature he had imagined. His fear remains, but compassion has begun to outweigh it. Mr. Tumnus says that he will not betray her. He will take her back to the lamppost and help her find the wardrobe. It is a small decision, made in a small cave, yet it becomes the first quiet breach in Jadis's rule. The warmth of the hearth gathers around the two figures as they prepare to leave. Lucy pulls on her coat, and the fabric feels cool where it has dried beside the fire. Mr. Tumnus wraps his scarf around his neck and retrieves the umbrella from the doorway. Outside, the snow has deepened, covering the earlier tracks beneath a smooth white layer. The brass handle of the door is cold against Lucy's fingers. For one lingering moment, the cave remains a little household of light, plates, books, and music, protected by a faun's decision to show mercy. They step into the forest together. Mr. Tumnus walks carefully, holding the umbrella above Lucy so that snowflakes do not settle upon her face. He carries no parcels now, leaving his hands free to guide her through the trees. The path seems longer in the darkness, though the lamppost eventually reappears between the branches. Its light is pale and steady, reflected in the wet snow beneath their boots. Mr. Tumnus keeps looking behind him, but no pursuer comes. The forest remains still, and the silence seems to accept his act of courage. The umbrella receives the falling snow in a soft, continuous pattern. Flakes gather upon the dark cloth, slide towards the edges, and drop beside Lucy's boots. Wet snow presses beneath her soles with a muted sound, while the faun's hooves make deeper hollows along the path. The air has sharpened during their absence, and the metallic chill around the lamppost reaches outward through the trees. Far above, branches scrape together in the wind, though the sound is softened by their heavy covering of white. The lamp glows ahead, a familiar point in the long winter darkness. At the lamppost, Mr. Tumnus points towards the trees where the wardrobe stands. He tells Lucy that she must go quickly, because the forest is not safe after dark. She thanks him, and the faun answers with a tired smile. He has changed since their first meeting beneath the lamp. The nervous stranger who intended to serve the witch now stands beside the child he has chosen to protect. Lucy walks towards the wardrobe, then turns to look back. Mr. Tumnus remains beneath the snow, holding his umbrella while the lamppost shines between them. The yellow light touches the faun's shoulders and makes the falling snow appear almost golden. His footprints curve away from the lamp and disappear beneath the trees, leading towards the cave with its quiet fire. Lucy's own tracks point in the opposite direction, towards the hidden wardrobe and the distant house. Cold air moves across her face as she passes beyond the circle of light. The forest smells of fir needles and wet bark, and the snow beneath her boots has become heavier. Behind her, the umbrella lowers, and Mr. Tumnus begins his lonely walk home. Lucy reaches the wardrobe and pushes through the coats. Darkness closes around her for an instant, carrying the scent of wool, cedar, and dust. Then she emerges into the spare room of the professor's house. The coats brush against her hair, and the wooden wardrobe door stands open behind her. The room is ordinary again, with familiar walls and a quiet carpet beneath her feet. Only a short time has passed in the house. The others are still nearby, and the day outside the windows has not changed in any important way. The spare room feels warmer than the forest, though the smell of mothballs and old wood is less pleasant than the scent of Mr. Tumnus's cave. Dust rests upon the wardrobe's polished surface, and a thin line of daylight lies beneath the door. Lucy's hands are cold from the snow, but there is no snow upon her coat and no wetness upon the carpet. The ordinary room holds no trace of Narnia. Its stillness is domestic and pale, while memories of firelight, tea, sardines on toast, and the flute remain vivid within Lucy's mind. Lucy hurries to Peter, Susan, and Edmund and tells them what has happened. She speaks of the snowy forest, the lamppost, the faun, the cave, and the white witch called Jadis. She tells them that Narnia is always winter because of the witch, and that Christmas is not allowed to come. Peter listens with puzzled patience. Susan asks whether Lucy has been hiding somewhere in the house. Edmund smiles in a way that makes the story seem childish. None of them can find any reason to believe that a country lies behind the wardrobe. The four children stand in a familiar room while Lucy's account fills the air. The fire in the grate gives off a dry warmth, and the floorboards hold the faint scent of polish. Peter's expression remains careful, Susan's is doubtful, and Edmund's amusement comes and goes like a small shadow. The house creaks somewhere beyond the corridor, settling into the evening. No snow melts beside Lucy's shoes, and no trace of forest clings to her sleeves. The ordinary evidence of England seems stronger than the extraordinary memory of Narnia. Peter, Susan, and Edmund inspect the wardrobe for themselves. They open both doors, look behind the coats, and place their hands against the wooden back. The wardrobe appears entirely ordinary. It contains nothing except clothing, darkness, and the smell of old fabric. Lucy insists that the forest was there, but the older children cannot see it. Their doubt briefly seals the wardrobe shut, not with a lock or bolt, but with the weight of their disbelief. Lucy leaves the room while the familiar house resumes its quiet evening. Within the wardrobe, the coats hang in still rows, their woolen surfaces holding a muted, dusty fragrance. The wooden back is solid beneath searching fingers, and the hinges give a small complaint as the doors open and close. No lamppost shines through the darkness, and no snowflake falls upon the carpet. Beyond the spare room, footsteps pass along the corridor, then fade towards the stairs. The house feels safely enclosed, while the memory of Narnia lies hidden like a coal beneath ash. Somewhere beyond England, the lamp continues burning in the snowy wood. Later, Lucy enters the wardrobe again, and Edmund follows her. He does not follow because he believes her exactly, but because he wants to discover where she has been. The coats brush against both children as they move forwards. Lucy reaches the snowy forest first. Edmund steps after her and finds the same lamppost shining among the trees. Yet the forest seems darker to him than it had seemed to Lucy. The snow is cold, the trees are close, and no friendly fawn waits beneath the lamp with parcels and an umbrella. Edmund stands beneath the light while snow lands upon his shoulders. The metallic chill of the lamppost reaches through his fingers when he touches it, and the wet ground gives softly beneath his boots. The trees form a black wall around the small circle of yellow illumination. There is no sound of flute music, no fragrance of tea, and no warm cave nearby. Lucy's earlier experience seems impossible beside this colder version of Narnia. The forest offers Edmund no explanation, only a white path and the lamp burning steadily above him. Edmund meets Lucy in Narnia, and she tells him that he has finally seen the truth. They walk together for a short distance, but he remains uneasy. Soon they encounter the White Witch, Jadis, traveling in a sledge through the snow. She speaks with Edmund and gives him sweet food, asking questions about Lucy and the world beyond Narnia. Her manner is cold beneath its politeness. The winter around her seems to deepen, and the promise of warmth becomes tangled with obedience. Edmund listens, fascinated and afraid, while the lamppost recedes behind him. The sledge cuts through the snow with a hard, narrow sound. Ice shines along its runners, and the horses breathe pale clouds into the frozen air. Jadis's garments appear white against the forest, yet the whiteness seems sharper than the snow and less natural than the lamp's golden glow. Edmund tastes the sweetness she offers, while the cold presses against his cheeks and settles within the seams of his coat. Lucy's footprints lead away behind them, partly covered by new flakes. Ahead, the trees stand silent beneath the long enchantment of winter. When Edmund returns through the wardrobe, he denies that he has visited Narnia. He tells Peter and Susan that he and Lucy had only been pretending. Lucy knows this is untrue, but the others do not yet understand what has changed. The house remains in wartime Britain, while the children stay with the professor, far from the danger of London. In England, the wardrobe is once again an ordinary piece of furniture. In Narnia, the lamppost still stands beneath the snow, and Jadiz's rule continues. The English room receives Edmund with its familiar warmth. A fire burns somewhere downstairs, and the scent of supper rests faintly in the corridor. His shoes leave no wet marks, though the forest snow has been beneath them. The wardrobe doors close with a soft wooden sound, hiding the coats and the darkness behind them. Susan watches Lucy with concern, and Peter tries to keep peace between them. Edmund's face remains composed, but the taste of enchanted sweetness lingers in his memory like a bright and troublesome fragment. The story of Narnia began in Lewis's imagination with a single clear image. He saw a faun in a snowy wood, carrying an umbrella and parcels beneath the winter trees. That image came before the larger country, before the witch, and before the wardrobe became a doorway between worlds. It held the strange meeting of domestic errands and deep wilderness, of a small household concealed beneath the snow and a child standing alone beneath a lamp. The scene grew gradually, like a path appearing through falling flakes. You can imagine the first image settling upon a quiet afternoon, with paper, books, and winter light around Lewis's desk. The faun's parcels suggest bread, tea, and ordinary obligations, while the umbrella belongs to a world of rain rather than enchanted snow. White flakes gather upon its fabric, turning a familiar object into something uncertain. The forest is not yet filled with voices or battles. It is simply cold, silent, and pale, with one narrow circle of lamplight waiting between the trunks. From that still picture, Narnia begins to take shape. Oxford's Magdalen College identifies the arrival of evacuee children at the kilns in 1939 as a likely immediate prompt for the story. The children came from a Britain altered by wartime danger, and the house offered a setting where imagination could unfold beside ordinary responsibilities. The fictional visits to Narnia occur during that same wartime period, while Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy stay with the professor. Their movement between the spare room and the snowy wood, therefore, joins two kinds of uncertainty, one created by history and one by enchantment. At the kilns, the winter air would have carried the scent of damp earth, stone, and bare branches. Footsteps might have sounded upon gravel, then softened where leaves had gathered along the path. A household receiving evacuee children would have contained unfamiliar voices, packed belongings, and rooms suddenly made communal. Within such surroundings, the image of a lamppost in snow could hold both distance and shelter. Its light would seem small against the forest, yet sufficient to make a meeting possible. The imagined cold becomes a quiet companion to the remembered house. Lucy's first meeting with Mr. Tumnus remains gentle because danger is folded inside kindness. Tea, sardines on toast, boiled eggs, cake, firelight, and music soften the first strangeness of Narnia. The Faun's Cave is a small domestic dwelling, but it is also a place where fear is confronted privately. Mr. Tumnus was expected to report Lucy to the White Witch, yet conversation allows him to choose another path. His refusal is not loud or triumphant. It is a quiet act of mercy beneath the long winter. The fire in the cave has now become a memory carried into the English house. Its warmth belongs to stone walls, woven fabric, and a wooden table marked by years of use. The tea's fragrance remains faintly in the mind, along with the salt of sardines, the crisp edge of toast, and the sweetness of cake. The flute has fallen silent, though its reedy notes seem to linger among the rafters. Outside, snow presses against Mr. Tumnus's door. Inside, one decision has made the room kinder than the country beyond it. The lamppost stands in the snowy forest of Narnia, marking the place where fear first gives way to friendship. Lucy follows it through the snow and meets a faun carrying parcels and an umbrella. Mr. Tumnus invites her to his cave for tea, then changes his mind after speaking with her. He escorts her back to the lamppost rather than betraying her. In that small journey, Jadis's rule receives its first quiet resistance. The winter remains, but it is no longer complete. Snow gathers again upon the umbrella, and the lamppost casts a narrow path of brightness across the ground. Wet snow lies beneath Lucy's boots, while the trees keep their deep, patient silence. Far from the forest, the professor's house remains ordinary, warm, and temporary. The wardrobe appears closed, but its darkness has already opened into another country. Firelight rests upon the cave walls in memory, tea cools beside an empty plate, and the faint sound of the flute fades into the winter air. The lamp continues burning, alone and steady, among the trees. You follow Lucy into the wardrobe alone, though you had not intended to leave the others behind. The coats close around your shoulders, and the familiar smell of dust and cedar fades into the colder scent of snow. Your hands move through hanging fur, rough cloth, and empty darkness until your shoes meet the soft ground of the white forest. Lucy is nowhere beside you. Between the trees, winter light lies pale and steady, without any visible sun. Snow gathers upon the branches in thick, silent layers, and the narrow path ahead seems to continue farther than the room behind you. You stand among the trunks with an uncomfortable feeling of being alone, while the wardrobe remains hidden somewhere behind the hanging coats. The forest receives you without movement. Needles of ice rest upon the black twigs, and every branch carries a thin rim of brightness. Cold air enters your sleeves and settles along your wrists, while the snow beneath your shoes gives a small, muffled sound. No bird calls from the white trees, and no wind troubles the high branches. A faint line of blue shadow gathers beneath the firs, where the snow has been pressed smooth by nothing you can see. Your breath rises before you in a quiet cloud and disappears among the trunks. Far away, something approaches over the frozen ground. At first, the sound is no more than a distant vibration beneath the hush. Then bells begin to mark the silence, slow and clear, while runners pass over packed snow with a long, whispering scrape. A sledge emerges between the trees, drawn by animals whose breath hangs thickly in the air. The figure seated upon it is tall and terrible, dressed entirely in white. White fur surrounds the shoulders, white fabric falls in severe folds, and the frozen air gives the face a brightness that seems almost carved. The sledge brings color into the forest through its polished harness, its dark runners, and the faint red warmth of the animal's eyes. You remain standing as the sledge comes nearer. The woman upon it regards you with composed authority. She does not appear surprised to find a human child beneath the trees, and her stillness possesses the ceremonial calm of someone accustomed to being obeyed. The bells continue their measured ringing until the sledge stops beside you. The woman tells you that she is the Queen of Narnia. Snow rests upon the white fur at your side, and the cold presses more firmly against your face. The sledge has halted so completely that the bells no longer move, leaving only the faint creak of leather and the slow, steaming breath of the animals. A narrow edge of frost shines along the runners. The woman's white clothing seems to borrow its color from the forest, while the dark hollows between the trees gather around her like a court without voices. Even the snow beneath your boots feels changed by her arrival. She asks your name, and you answer Edmund. You speak more quietly than you mean to. The Queen examines you with a patience that feels less like kindness than measurement, as though your name, clothing, and uncertainty have all been placed upon an invisible scale. The Queen is Jadis. She invites you to sit upon the sledge, where the cushion is covered with pale material that gives slightly beneath your weight. The animal nearest you shifts its hooves, and a thin spray of snow moves over the polished runner. Jadis asks about the place from which you have come. You tell her that you have come through a wardrobe. She asks whether you entered Narnia alone, and you say that you did. The answer pleases her, although the pleasure is scarcely visible. Jadis asks about the other children, and her voice remains level as she draws the question closer. You tell her that you have a brother and 2 sisters. The words leave your mouth before caution can gather around them. Peter, Susan, and Lucy become present in the white air through the simple shape of your answer. Jadis listens without interruption, keeping her attention upon you while the bells hang silent above the snow. The forest seems to narrow around the sledge. The trees stand close enough to conceal one another, and the open spaces between them appear filled with drifting shadows. Somewhere beneath the snow, a branch breaks with a soft, distant crack. Jadis reaches into a small, covered container. Within it lies a sweet, unlike anything you have been offered in the professor's house. The pieces are pale and smooth, cut into neat cubes, and covered with fine sugar crystals that glitter against their soft surfaces. She gives you enchanted Turkish delight, also called lokum. The confection yields gently beneath your teeth. Its texture is tender and faintly elastic, made from a cooked mixture of sugar and starch that has cooled into a smooth, yielding mass. The piece carries a delicate fragrance, and its sweetness spreads slowly across your tongue. Lokum is often flavored or colored, though the pieces Jadis gives you are pale beneath their dusting of sugar. The English commercial name for lokum is Turkish delight, a name that sounds bright and harmless in the cold forest. You eat the first piece and find that it is not enough. Sugar crystals cling to your fingers, and a little powder rests upon the white sleeve of your coat. Jadis watches as you reach for another piece, offering the container without haste. The sweetness seems to soften the sharpness of the air. You take more Turkish delight. The taste becomes fuller as you continue. Each cube has the same delicate resistance, the same soft collapse, and the same fine grain of sugar against your lips. You know that the quantity is small, yet the desire for another piece grows with every mouthful. Jadis tells you that she can provide as much Turkish delight as you wish. The promise is given in the calm tone of an ordinary arrangement. More lokum, more often, and in quantities large enough to fill a room, perhaps even a whole table. The queen does not need to raise her voice, because the sweetness has already begun to speak for her. You ask whether she truly is the queen of Narnia. Jadis answers that she is, and her reply carries no uncertainty. She says that the country lies beneath her authority, that its creatures obey her commands, and that her power extends wherever snow remains upon the ground. The sledge stands motionless beneath the trees. Its runners are dark with frost, and a thin border of ice has formed around the leather straps. The animals breathe in slow clouds, their sides rising and falling beneath their harnesses. Jadis asks whether your brother and sisters are with you. You tell her that they are not with you now. Her attention rests upon the omission. She asks where they may be found, and you describe the house, the wardrobe, and the uncertain route through which Lucy has disappeared. The question sounds simple, but it draws the shape of your family into Jadis's hands. Jadis offers you more Turkish delight if you bring your siblings to her. She does not describe the promise as a demand. She presents it as a favor that could continue for as long as you remained useful. More lokum would wait in a palace, perhaps in rooms warmer than the forest, where no one would measure each sweet cube before allowing you to eat it. The offer seems to leave a quiet space inside you. Jadis then speaks of a different reward. She says that a boy who brings such important visitors to the queen might himself become important. She suggests that you could rise above the position assigned to you by your brother and sisters. Her words touch your wish to become important and powerful. You imagine a place where Peter cannot order you about, where Susan cannot correct your stories, and where Lucy's discoveries do not place her at the center of every conversation. The thought arrives quietly, accompanied by the soft memory of sugar against your teeth. Jadis speaks of honor, influence, and authority. She tells you that those who serve the queen are remembered. She hints that a loyal child may receive a high position, perhaps even a place close to the throne. The words are polished and restrained, yet each one seems chosen to enlarge the space you might occupy. The white forest remains silent around you. Snow has settled upon the folded edge of the sledge, and the branches hold their weight without bending. Beyond Jadiz's shoulder, the trees form a long corridor of shadow, leading nowhere visible. You begin to understand that the bargain has already been made. No formal agreement is written, and no witness stands beside the runners. There is only the taste of enchanted locum, the promise of more Turkish delight, and the suggestion that your future could become greater than the lives arranged around you. Jadis asks you to bring the others to her. You say that you will try. The queen accepts this answer as though it were sufficient. The sledge begins to move, and the bells return with their slow, measured ringing. The runners pass over the packed snow, carrying the white figure away between the trees. For a short while, the sound remains. Then the bells grow distant, the runners become a faint scraping line, and the sledge disappears behind the snow-covered trunks. You stand alone again, with sugar still shining upon your fingers and the cold returning to every part of the clearing. The empty hush after the sledge has gone seems larger than the silence before it. Snow drifts from the branches in thin, powdery falls. The particles settle upon the smooth ground, softening the marks left by the runners until only two pale grooves remain. A trace of animal warmth lingers near the place where the sledge waited. The air tastes clean and metallic. Beneath it, you can still imagine the perfume of the locum, delicate and sweet against the frozen forest. Your glove carries a few sugar crystals, which sparkle briefly when the light reaches them. The wardrobe seems far away. You turn through the trees, following no clear path except the direction in which you believe the coats and the dark wooden door must lie. The forest gives no sign of Lucy, Peter, or Susan. It offers only white trunks, blue shadows, and the quiet pressure of snow. At last, the coats surround you again. Your fingers brush wool, fur, and rough old fabric, and the frozen air gives way to the dry smell of the wardrobe. You step forward, and the wooden floor receives your shoes with familiar firmness. You return through the wardrobe after the meeting. The room is warm compared with Narnia, although the warmth does not reach the secret carried beneath your coat. The wardrobe door stands open behind you, and its dark interior seems ordinary once more. Peter and Susan are nearby. You do not tell them about Jadis, the sledge, or the promise of Turkish delight. The encounter remains folded inside your silence, protected by the same instinct that keeps a person from displaying a valuable object in an unguarded room. Lucy soon appears and speaks of Narnia. She tells you that the witch rules the country. She says that Mr. Tumnus fears her, and that winter has lasted a very long time beneath her power. Her account places the name of the White Witch beside that of the Queen, joining the woman on the sledge to the cold authority of the forest. You listen without showing what you already know. Lucy's words make the sweetness seem less innocent. The sugar crystals upon your fingers have disappeared, yet the memory of their brightness remains. Jadis's promise now rests beside Lucy's fear, and the two impressions refuse to separate. Peter asks whether Lucy has really visited Narnia. Susan waits for your answer, her expression serious in the warm room. The question is directed towards Lucy, but your own secret makes the silence feel unusually close. You can hear the faint movement of the house beyond the doorway. You deny that Lucy has previously visited Narnia. Your denial is simple, and the room accepts it for a moment. Lucy looks wounded, while Peter and Susan turn their attention towards the uncertainty between the four of you. The wardrobe remains behind your shoulder, closed and dark. The coats hang without movement inside it. A few dry fibers catch upon a wooden peg, and the ordinary furniture of the room stands in its familiar places. Nothing visible suggests a sledge, a queen, or a forest lying beyond the back wall. Yet the meeting has altered the house. The following days pass beneath the pressure of an unspoken division. Lucy carries her certainty about Narnia, while you carry the knowledge that Jadis has asked for your siblings. Peter and Susan remain between these two accounts, trying to understand why the wardrobe has become a place of disagreement. The professor's house continues to hold its quiet routines. Tea is prepared, doors are opened, and footsteps cross the hall. Outside, weather moves against the windows, while the four children keep circling the subject of the wardrobe. Your secret does not need to be mentioned in order to occupy the room. Soon the children enter Narnia together. You step through the coats beside Peter, Susan, and Lucy, and the wardrobe remains behind you as the route into the wood. Its wooden frame stands at the edge of the white forest, a narrow doorway between the warm house and the winter country. The four of you emerge among the trees. Lucy is at the front, and Peter carries himself with the cautious attention of someone responsible for the others. Susan looks towards the branches and open snow, while you remain aware of the wardrobe behind you. The coats hang in the darkness of its interior. Cold air moves around your face as you leave the wardrobe's threshold. The forest appears familiar to Lucy, though every path seems altered by snow. The light lies low between the trees, and the shadows possess a depth not found in the rooms of the house. You begin walking towards Mr. Tumnus's cave. The route passes beneath heavy branches and along narrow rises where snow has collected in smooth ridges. Lucy leads with confidence, remembering the path from her earlier visit. Peter and Susan follow closely, and you keep near them while the name of Jadis remains quiet within your thoughts. The forest gives no answer to Lucy's calls. No flute sounds from the trees. No friendly figure emerges from the white undergrowth. Silence around the path feels deliberate, as though the country has learned to remain still whenever authority passes nearby. You reach the cave and find the entrance unchanged. The stone opening is dark beneath its arch of snow, and the small path leading inward has been disturbed by several feet. A faint draft moves from the interior, carrying the cold mineral smell of rock and the dry odor of old ashes. Inside, Mr. Tumnus's cave has been searched. Furniture has been moved from its proper places. Cushions lie overturned, shelves have been emptied, and small belongings rest scattered across the floor. The disorder is not the careless confusion of weather or animals, but the purposeful disturbance left by people looking for evidence. A chair has been pushed against the wall. The table stands at an awkward angle, with one leg caught upon a loose rug. A cup lies broken near the hearth, and ashes have been drawn across the stones. The room feels colder because its familiar arrangement has been removed. You move through the cave with careful steps. Lucy lowers herself beside a displaced bundle of papers, searching among the scattered objects for some sign of Mr. Tumnus. Peter examines the doorway, while Susan studies the wall near the hearth. You remain near the overturned furniture, hearing the small sounds made by your own breathing. The cold cave holds the shape of an absence. Mr. Tumnus is not waiting beside the fire. His flute is not resting where Lucy remembers it. The empty place near the hearth seems more significant than the broken cup, because it shows that a living presence has been taken away. A paper notice has been pinned against the dark wood near the entrance. The paper is pale and stiff, its corners curled slightly from the damp. Dark writing marks the surface in formal lines, and the pin has been driven firmly into the wood. The notice declares that Mr. Tumnus has been arrested for treason. Lucy reads the words in silence. The name of Mr. Tumnus appears beneath the authority of the Queen. The sentence is brief, but it carries the force of a command already sent through the forest. The notice does not explain what happened inside the cave, because explanation is unnecessary to those who fear the power behind it. You look again at the paper. The dark wood around it is scratched, and a small flake of bark has fallen upon the lower edge. The notice trembles whenever the draft enters from outside, though the pin keeps it fixed against the wall. A second line identifies the authority responsible for the arrest. The witch's police chief is called Morgrim in the British edition, while the American edition gives the name Fenris Ulf. The two names belong to the same figure, the wolf who carries the Queen's orders through Narnia and makes the language of government sound like the language of pursuit. The cave offers no protection from that authority. Jadis rules not only through open force, but through secrecy, fear, and the isolation of those living beneath her power. A creature taken from a quiet cave may vanish before neighbors understand what has happened. A notice can replace a person, and a formal charge can stand where conversation once stood. The dark wood beneath your hand feels cold and rough. Dust has gathered in the seams of the floor, where furniture has been dragged across the stones. The disturbed cushions retain the faint smell of wool and smoke. Somewhere above the cave, snow slips from a branch and lands with a soft, heavy thump. Lucy stands beneath the notice. Her face is pale in the dim light, and her hands have closed tightly at her sides. The room around her seems smaller than before, its low ceiling pressing down upon the empty hearth and scattered belongings. Peter speaks quietly. He says that the arrest must have happened recently because the cave still seems to hold traces of its ordinary life. Susan touches the edge of the paper without removing it, then lets her hand fall back beside her coat. You remain silent. The sweetness offered by Jadis now seems connected to this paper, pinned against the dark wood. More Turkish delight had been promised in exchange for bringing your family, while Mr. Tumnus has been taken for helping Lucy. The bargain becomes heavier in the cold cave. Outside, the forest waits beneath its permanent winter. Branches bend under snow, paths disappear beneath new drifts, and distant sounds are softened before they can travel. The country seems to have forgotten the difference between natural silence and enforced silence. The four children leave the cave together. The notice remains behind, fixed against the wood, while Mr. Tumnus's scattered furniture waits beneath it. Lucy walks slowly at first, keeping one hand close to the pocket where she carries small things from home. Peter watches the path ahead, while Susan looks back once towards the dark entrance. You follow them into the trees. Snow has begun to fall again, though the flakes are fine enough to seem like dust in the air. They rest upon your hair and shoulders, melting where they touch the warmth of your coat. The path ahead is faint, and the branches make narrow arches above your heads. No bells sound in the distance. Only the movement of your feet breaks the white hush. Each step sinks slightly, then releases with a soft pull. The forest closes behind you, keeping the cave, the notice, and the arrested fawn within its silent depth. The winter seems less like weather than a system of government. It reaches every road, every cave, and every household hidden among the trees. Snow determines which paths can be crossed, while fear determines which doors remain closed. The cold keeps creatures apart, and secrecy prevents them from learning how many others have disappeared. Jadis has made the season part of her rule. Her sledge moves freely across the packed snow, carrying white fur, polished runners, and the authority of the Queen. Her notices remain upon dark wood. Her police chief travels through the forests, and her subjects learn to lower their voices whenever unfamiliar sounds approach. You remember the bells. Their rhythm had been gentle, almost beautiful, yet the beauty carried danger. The sledge brought color, ceremony, and threat into the white forest, then withdrew, leaving the empty hush after its passing. The taste of Locum returns to your memory. You can feel again the soft confection beneath your teeth, the cooked sugar and starch giving way beneath a coating of crystals. Turkish delight, the English commercial name for Locum, becomes entangled with the Queen's promise. More sweetness waits beyond betrayal. The thought moves beside you as the children continue along the snowy path. Peter speaks to Lucy in a low voice, and Susan answers from behind him. Their words drift between the trees, never quite reaching the warmth of ordinary conversation. You hear the name of Mr. Tumnus. Lucy says that he was kind, and that he feared the White Witch because she had placed Narnia beneath a long winter. Her words return to the cave and the paper notice, joining the remembered flute with the formal accusation of treason. You hear the name of Jadis. It belongs to the woman in white, the queen upon the sledge, and the presence that has entered your family without crossing the wardrobe. Her name passes through your thoughts more often than your lips, because secrecy has already become part of the bargain. The trees grow darker as evening approaches. Snow gathers upon the low branches, and the last daylight rests upon the upper needles. A narrow strip of pale sky appears between the trunks, while the ground becomes blue and silver beneath your feet. No one speaks for several moments. The silence is not empty. It contains the memory of Mr. Tumnus's cave, the warning pinned to the wood, and the knowledge that the Queen's authority has reached farther than any visible patrol. Peter walks ahead at a steady pace. Susan remains near Lucy, offering quiet companionship without asking questions that cannot yet be answered. You follow behind them, keeping your eyes upon the snow and listening to the faint creak of branches above. Your secret travels with you. It is heavier than the paper you refuse to show, though the paper itself remains in the cave. The promise of Turkish delight has become a thread tied around your thoughts, and every step seems to draw that thread tighter. The forest does not accuse you. It offers no voice, no gesture, and no sudden movement. It simply continues beneath the snow, with roots hidden under the ground and dark trunks rising into the white air. That stillness makes the Queen's power seem complete. Secrecy allows her arrests to remain separate events. Fear prevents creatures from speaking freely about them. Isolation ensures that a captive fawn, a hidden family, or a frightened child may believe that each danger exists alone. The power of Jadis depends partly upon this distance. The trees keep houses apart, winter keeps roads difficult, and the long silence conceals the movement of soldiers. Even the enchanted sweetness carries its own isolation, because the offer is made privately and designed to separate one child from the others. You move beneath another heavy branch. The snow above you sags in a smooth white curve, and a few crystals fall upon the collar of your coat. The cold has sharpened, drawing warmth from your cheeks and fingertips. In the distance, a small stream continues beneath its crust of ice. The sound is almost inaudible. Water moves below the frozen surface with a muted, patient murmur. The forest silence does not prevent every sound, but it forces each one to become small and private. The four of you continue through the winter country. Behind you, the wardrobe remains at the edge of the wood, its dark interior opening towards the ordinary house. Behind you as well, Mr. Tumnus's cave holds its disturbed furniture and paper notice. Ahead, the authority of Jadis extends through the snow. The Queen of Narnia has been seen. Her white fur, frozen air, and polished sledge remain vivid against the trees. Her name, Jadis, remains clear beside the name of the White Witch. Her promise remains sweet, and the price of that sweetness has begun to show itself. Evening gathers slowly. Branches become silhouettes, and the snow takes on the faint color of ash. Your footsteps follow the others along a path that seems both narrow and endless, while the woods settle into another night beneath the rule of winter. The bells do not return. Only the memory of runners passing over packed snow accompanies you. Somewhere far beyond the trees, the sledge may be waiting or moving towards another lonely traveler, carrying white ceremony through the frozen country. You walk onwards beside Peter, Susan, and Lucy. The cave disappears behind the trees, but its dark wood and pinned paper remain present in your mind. The taste of sugar fades, though the bargain does not. Under the pale sky, Narnia continues to hold its silence, and winter continues its work. The last whiteness of the sledge fades among the dark branches behind you as you walk beside Peter, Susan, and Lucy. The path descends gently between fir trees whose lower limbs carry heavy shelves of snow. Lucy keeps close to Susan, while Peter moves ahead with his hands tucked beneath his coat. Edmund follows more slowly. his thoughts turning towards the witch's castle, the sweet taste of Turkish delight, and the promises made in a cold underground room. No one speaks for several minutes. Beneath your boots, packed snow gives a soft, regular answer, while the wind passes through the forest like a breath drawn carefully through closed teeth. Somewhere beyond the trees, water moves beneath the ice. A faint wooden creak rises and vanishes, then comes again, steadier this time. Peter lifts his head towards it. The trees open around a broad, frozen stream, where a beaver dam stretches from bank to bank beneath a coating of snow. You stand near the edge and watch the pale surface shiver where dark water presses below. The dam is made from interwoven branches, rounded stones, reeds and roots, held together by patient work across many seasons. Ice has gathered along its lower ridges, giving the structure a glassy, silver outline. Snow brushes the roof of a small shelter built into the bank, and a line of smoke rises from a narrow chimney. The air carries wood smoke, wet fur, and the faint green scent of crushed branches. Somewhere inside, a tool touches timber with a quiet knock. Water murmurs beneath its frozen skin, hidden but not absent, and the whole dam seems to breathe with slow, careful strength. A voice calls from the bank, and a large beaver appears through the snow-laden reeds. He wears no human coat, though a small satchel hangs across his broad body, and his whiskers hold tiny beads of frost. Mr. Beaver looks closely at each of you before his gaze settles upon Lucy. From her pocket, she draws the handkerchief she once gave to Mr. Tumnus. The cloth is worn now, and one corner has become damp with snow, yet its color remains visible against her mitten. Mr. Beaver recognizes it at once. He tells you that the handkerchief belonged to a faun named Mr. Tumnus, and that Lucy gave it to him during her first visit to the lamp-post. The small square of cloth becomes a surviving message from Tumnus, proof that kindness has traveled farther than the children understood. Peter asks whether Mr. Beaver knows where the faun has gone. Cold moisture settles along your eyelashes as you stand beside the frozen stream. The wind has weakened, leaving the trees almost still, although the highest branches continue to release soft showers of powder. Snow rests on the beaver's fur in small white islands, melting slowly where the warmth of his body reaches it. The wooden dam gives another low creak beneath the ice, followed by a muffled rush from the water below. Around you, reeds lean beneath their burden, and the riverbank has become a narrow corridor of blue shadow. Lucy presses the handkerchief between her fingers, feeling the uneven weave of the fabric. Peter studies the shelter, Susan listens to the forest, and Edmund glances towards the road they have just traveled. Smoke bends southward above the roof, carrying the smell of burning birch into the winter air. Mr. Beaver lowers his voice and tells you that Mr. Tumnus has been taken away. He speaks of the witch's servants, who came to the cave and carried the faun to her house. The children understand that the pinned paper found earlier was not an ordinary message, but an accusation prepared to make Tumnus appear guilty of helping human beings. Mr. Beaver explains that wolves and other creatures loyal to the witch patrol the woods, listening for signs of resistance. The chief police officer is called Morgrim or Fenris Ulf in some versions of the old account. Whatever name is spoken, the creature is feared throughout Narnia. Peter's face becomes quiet and determined, while Susan draws Lucy nearer. Edmund hears the danger, but also remembers the witch's promises of sweetness, importance, and rank. Inside the beaver's home, winter seems to pause at the threshold. You step down into a low room where a fire burns in a stone hearth, and the walls are lined with smooth branches polished by long use. Wet fur steams gently near the warmth, filling the air with an earthy scent beneath the stronger fragrance of wood smoke. A crowded table occupies the center of the room, its surface marked by knives, bowls, wooden spoons, and pale rings left by hot pots. Bread lies beneath a folded cloth, and soup sends a steady ribbon of steam towards the dark rafters. Coats hang beside the entrance, dripping onto a shallow tray of stones. Shelves hold jars, thread, fishing hooks, and small bundles of herbs. The house contains food, warmth, and domestic order, preserved carefully against the wider winter. Mrs. Beaver moves through the room with quiet efficiency, setting additional bowls upon the table and making space among the chairs. You hear the scrape of a ladle against the pot, the soft breaking of bread, and the faint rustle of reeds packed into the walls. Mr. Beaver removes a piece of ice from his whiskers and hangs his satchel beside the door. Susan helps Mrs. Beaver arrange the spoons, while Lucy sits close enough to the fire for her hands to grow warm. Peter examines a map scratched upon a flat piece of bark. Edmund accepts a bowl of soup, though his attention remains fixed on the words spoken outside. Steam touches your face, carrying the fragrance of onions, roots, salt, and grain. Beyond the walls, snow brushes the roof in delicate waves, but inside, ordinary work continues with the calm rhythm of a protected household. Around the table, Mr. and Mrs. Beaver shelter the children from the cold and from the witches' patrols. Mr. Beaver tells you that the witches' rule has made it always winter in Narnia, although the land has not forgotten the shape of spring. The trees remember leaves, the rivers remember sunlight, and the birds remember the proper season for nesting. The witch also prevents Christmas from coming, so that the calendar itself seems held beneath her hand. Mr. Beaver says that Father Christmas has not passed through the country for a long time, and the people of Narnia have grown accustomed to expecting nothing. His words settle over the table while the fire shifts among the logs. The children understand that winter is not merely weather, but the outward form of a power that wishes to make hope seem unreasonable. The room grows warmer as the fire settles into a bed of glowing coals. Light from the hearth touches the bowls, the rough table, and the small drops of water gathering beneath the children's coats. A folded blanket rests over the back of one chair, and Mrs. Beaver places it around Lucy's shoulders. The soup leaves a savory warmth in your mouth, while fresh bread breaks apart softly beneath your fingers. Somewhere behind the wall, water passes through a narrow channel, making a sound like distant rain. The dam answers with a slow groan whenever the current shifts against it. Mr. Beaver's paws move patiently over a length of wood, trimming its edge with a small knife. Mrs. Beaver mends a torn strap beside the fire. Their work gives the house a steady center, while the whispered talk of danger remains at its outer edge. Mr. Beaver speaks of an old prophecy concerning 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve. He does not recite it loudly, for the walls are thin and the witches' creatures may be moving among the trees. The prophecy says that the witches' reign will end when the 4 thrones at Cair Paravel are filled. Cair Paravel stands upon the eastern coast, where the sea reaches towards the sunrise, and its 4 thrones have remained empty through the long winter. Mr. Beaver looks from Peter to Susan, then to Edmund and Lucy, as if the ancient words have suddenly acquired human faces. The children listen without interrupting. You hear the faint movement of paws beyond the shelter, followed by silence. A wolf may be watching the house, or only the wind may have disturbed the snow. Outside, darkness gathers between the trunks, although the day has not fully ended. The blue light beneath the branches becomes grey, then gradually deepens into a color almost black. Ice rims the stream in uneven shelves, and the current moves beneath them with muted, secret persistence. The dam's surface is rough beneath your gloved hand, each branch raised slightly from its neighbor. Snow has entered every hollow, softening sharp edges and filling the spaces where small animals once passed. Smoke drifts low before lifting into the trees. From inside the house come the subdued sounds of bowls being collected, chairs shifting, and firewood placed upon the hearth. The scent of wet fur clings to the doorway, mingling with resin from split pine. You remain within the shelter of the walls, though the forest seems close enough to touch. The name Aslan is spoken for the first time in this house, and the atmosphere changes before anyone explains why. Mr. Beaver identifies Aslan as the true king of Narnia, whose authority existed before the witch came and endured while she ruled. He tells you that Aslan is the Turkish word for lion, carrying both the image of a great animal and the weight of a royal title. Aslan is described as the son of the emperor overseas, whose power lies beyond the horizon and beyond the witch's reach. Mr. Beaver does not pretend that Aslan is safe or tame. Instead, he speaks of him with reverence, caution, and an affection inseparable from fear. The children sit very still, and the fire gives a sudden, quiet snap. A deeper warmth seems to gather in the room, though the logs have not been moved. The soup pot rests near the hearth, releasing the last traces of its fragrance into the air. Mrs. Beaver folds the cloth that covered the bread and sets it neatly beside the empty bowls. The room's shadows lengthen across the floorboards, stopping beneath the table where the children's boots rest. Outside, snow continues brushing against the roof, and small grains slide down the chimney mouth. The low fire makes the metal hinges glow faintly. You notice the grain of the table, worn smooth by years of elbows and meals. You hear Mr. Beaver's breathing, Mrs. Beaver's thread passing through fabric, and the faint creak of the dam beneath the ice. Each sound holds its place within the sheltered order of the house. Mr. Beaver tells you that Aslan is returning to Narnia. The statement is simple, yet it seems to reach beyond the walls and travel through the frozen country. He says that the old stories have begun to stir again, and that the time of waiting may be drawing towards its end. Peter asks where Aslan can be found. Mr. Beaver answers that Aslan is near the stone table, an ancient place connected with the deepest laws of Narnia. The children are to be led there, though the road will pass through snow, forest, and territory watched by the witch's loyal creatures. Susan asks about Tumnus, and Mr. Beaver admits that no one can promise what has happened to the fawn. Lucy keeps the handkerchief close, while the name Aslan rests quietly among the bowls and cooling spoons. The fire has lowered now, and red light moves beneath the blackened wood. A trace of ash floats upward before disappearing into the chimney. Heat gathers against the front of your coat, while your back remains aware of the winter pressing through the walls. The air contains bread, soup, smoke, and the clean dampness of fur drying beside the hearth. Mrs. Beaver opens a wooden cupboard and brings out a bundle of maps, each one creased along old folds. Their surfaces smell faintly of dust and pine resin. Mr. Beaver spreads one across the crowded table, weighing its corners with a bowl and a knife. The map shows rivers, hills, forests, and the eastern coastline near Cair Paravel. Your eyes pass over the names as the room grows hushed, and the road towards the stone table begins to take shape. While Mr. Beaver explains the route, a distant howl rises beyond the frozen stream. It begins as a thin note, then broadens until several voices seem to answer from different parts of the forest. Peter turns towards the door, and Susan draws Lucy's blanket closer around her shoulders. Mrs. Beaver pauses with her needle held above the torn strap. The howl fades, but no one mistakes its meaning. The witch's forces include wolves and many other creatures loyal to her, and their patrols have become more numerous since the children entered Narnia. Morgrim, also called Fenris Ulf in some accounts, serves as the witch's chief police officer. His name alone is enough to make the room feel smaller. Mr. Beaver extinguishes one lamp, leaving only the fire to illuminate the map and the faces gathered over it. Edmund sits near the edge of the table, listening as the others discuss Aslan and the road eastward. In his mind, the witch's promises return with persuasive sweetness. She had offered him Turkish delight, a position of rank, and the possibility of becoming important in a country where his older brother had always seemed stronger. The sound of the wolves outside makes the beaver's shelter feel temporary, while the image of the witch's castle appears firm and powerful. Edmund says little. He watches Lucy's hand close around Tumnus's handkerchief and notices how the others trust one another. When Mrs. Beaver turns to fetch more wood, Edmund rises quietly. He crosses the room without taking his coat from the peg, opens the door, and slips away into the snow before anyone sees him leave. A narrow current of cold enters the house and travels along the floorboards. The fire bends towards the doorway, and loose ash stirs across the hearthstone. Edmund's footprints begin beside the threshold, darkening the snow where his boots press through the powder. For a few moments, the marks remain clear, pointing away from the dam and towards the deeper trees. The forest receives them quickly. Snow falls from an overhanging branch and blurs the first prints, while later impressions vanish beneath drifting white. The smell of smoke escapes into the open air, followed by the warmer sense of bread and soup. Inside, the remaining children have not yet understood what has happened. Outside, the river continues beneath the ice, and the dam creaks as if the structure itself has noticed the missing weight. Peter asks where Edmund has gone, and the silence answers before anyone else can speak. Mrs. Beaver looks towards the empty place at the table, then sees the open door. Mr. Beaver moves outside and studies the disturbed snow. He understands that Edmund has left to find the witch. The departure alerts the others that Edmund has betrayed them, and the knowledge settles heavily among the family's ordinary objects. Peter's first response is anger, but it changes quickly into concern for Edmund and for the danger now approaching the house. Susan asks whether the witch knows about the children. Mr. Beaver says that she will learn soon enough, because Edmund will tell her where the dam lies. There is no time to gather much. The map is folded, the fire is covered, and the path towards Aslan must be taken immediately. Night has settled across the riverbank by the time you leave the Beavers' home. The roof is quiet now, with only occasional grains sliding down its snowy slope. Mrs. Beaver carries a small pack containing bread, dried meat, and a wrapped portion of soup kept warm within a sealed vessel. Mr. Beaver checks the straps and studies the trees. The children pull their coats close and step onto the dam, where the timber shifts faintly beneath the snow. Beneath your feet, water presses through the woven branches, creating a deep and patient sound. The shelter behind you glows through its small window, a square of amber light among the blue shadows. Then Mr. Beaver closes the door, and the warmth, food, and domestic order of the house recede into the darkness. You follow Mr. and Mrs. Beaver along a narrow route beside the stream, keeping beneath the cover of trees. The beavers move with confidence through the snow, choosing firm ground and avoiding open places where patrols might see you. Peter carries a branch as a makeshift staff, while Susan holds Lucy's hand whenever the path becomes steep. The night air feels dry against your face, and each breath leaves a brief cloud before dissolving. Behind you, the dam is hidden by reeds and darkness. Ahead, the forest closes over the path, its trunks standing close together like pillars in a dim hall. Snow settles upon your shoulders, and the sound of your steps is softened almost completely. Far away, a wolf calls once, but Mr. Beaver does not turn. The route rises gradually through fir and birch, leaving the stream below among hollows of ice. Mr. Beaver points towards a ridge where the trees thin, explaining that the stone table lies beyond several wooded valleys. He speaks of Cair Paravel as the place where the 4 thrones will one day be filled, though he does not know when that day will arrive. Peter walks near him, asking about the country and the laws that bind it. Susan watches the branches for movement. Lucy listens for any sound that might suggest Tumnus is near. Edmund's absence follows the group like another traveller, invisible but continually remembered. The prophecy of 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve moves quietly from one mind to another, while Aslan's return gives the difficult road a direction. The moon appears between the branches, pale and incomplete behind thin cloud. Its light rests upon the snow without making the forest bright. Tree shadows stretch across the path in long, broken bars, and the branches above hold small reservoirs of powder. A gust passes through the upper canopy, producing a sound like distant surf. Lower down, the air remains still enough for you to hear the beaver's paws pressing into the crust. The pack at Mrs. Beaver's side gives a soft rustle whenever she walks. Bread lies within it, wrapped carefully against the cold, and the thought of that bread brings back the crowded table, the soup, and the red fire at the dam. The memory provides its own small warmth as the dark trees close over the path. After some time, the beavers lead Peter, Susan, and Lucy towards Aslan, and the trail leaves the sheltered river country behind. The trees become taller and more widely spaced, revealing slopes that descend into valleys filled with blue shadow. Mr. Beaver tells you that Aslan is waiting near the stone table, where faithful creatures have gathered despite the witch's danger. The name is repeated softly among the travelers, not as a chant, but as a steady point of reference. Aslan, the true king of Narnia, is returning. He is the son of the emperor overseas, drawing near from a power older than the winter. With each mention, the road seems less empty, although no figure has yet appeared among the trees. The snow becomes deeper beyond the ridge, reaching above the children's boots and slowing every step. Mr. Beaver makes a path, pressing down the surface with his broad body, while Mrs. Beaver follows and tests the hollows with a stout stick. Peter supports Lucy across one steep section, and Susan steadies herself against a trunk whose bark feels cold and ridged beneath her glove. The pack of provisions grows lighter as Mrs. Beaver divides the bread among the travelers. Small crumbs fall onto the snow and remain visible like pale grains against silver. Your fingers grow numb whenever they leave your pockets, and the wind finds the space beneath your collar. Yet the silence no longer feels entirely hostile. From somewhere ahead comes a faint stirring, as if the forest has begun to expect someone. Near midnight, the group pauses beneath a rocky overhang where the snow cannot reach. Mrs. Beaver unwraps the remaining soup, and a little warmth rises from the vessel into the narrow shelter. Peter sits with his back against the stone, while Lucy leans beside Susan and closes her eyes. Mr. Beaver studies the darkness beyond the rocks. He says that the witch's winter has lasted so long because fear has taught the creatures to accept it. He remembers summers in which the river ran freely and evenings when Christmas lights appeared in the villages. The old prophecy, he says, preserved the possibility of change even when no one could see how change might come. You hold the warm vessel between your hands and listen to his low voice, while snow gathers silently at the edge of the overhang. The road resumes beneath a sky beginning to pale along the eastern horizon. There is no sunrise yet, only a gradual thinning of darkness above the treetops. Frost has formed upon the children's scarves, and the edges of Peter's hair shine with ice. The forest floor rises and falls in long frozen folds, carrying you away from the dam and towards the stone table. Behind the group, the beaver's home is now many miles distant, hidden beneath its roof of snow and protected by the interwoven dam. Somewhere behind you, Edmund is traveling towards the witch, drawn by sweetness and rank into a country of gates and stone. Somewhere ahead, Aslan is returning to Narnia, and the thought of his name begins to change the atmosphere of the road. At first, the change is almost too slight to describe. The air remains cold, and snow still covers every branch, yet the darkness seems less settled than before. Mr. Beaver walks more quickly, and Mrs. Beaver lifts her head as though hearing a sound beyond ordinary distance. Peter's tired shoulders straighten. Susan looks across the open slope towards the faint light, while Lucy keeps one hand upon Tumnus's handkerchief. The cloth has become a small, quiet emblem of friendship carried through winter. No sentence of the prophecy is spoken, but its meaning accompanies every footstep. 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve are moving towards 4 empty thrones at Cair Paravel. The witch's reign still surrounds you, yet it no longer appears without limit. The first sunlight touches the uppermost branches and leaves the ground in shadow. You see the snow change from grey to pearl, then from pearl to delicate gold along the ridge. Fine crystals drift from the firs when the morning wind begins. The cold has sharpened the world, giving every twig a distinct outline and every footprint a clear edge. Behind you, the trees stand densely together, their trunks disappearing into layers of mist. Ahead, the land opens towards distant hills, and a long, pale track leads eastward. The beavers' footsteps mark the center of the path, while the children's smaller impressions gather around them. A raven crosses the sky without calling. The forest is still, but the stillness has acquired the quality of waiting. Mr. Beaver tells you that the stone table is not far now, though the final distance must be covered carefully. He speaks of Aslan's camp, where creatures from many parts of Narnia have come quietly through the winter. Peter asks whether Aslan will be able to defeat the witch. Mr. Beaver answers that Aslan is not measured by the strength of any single battle, and that his power belongs to a deeper law. The words are not dramatic. They are offered as calmly as directions across a familiar landscape. Susan looks towards the horizon, where the light has begun to widen. Lucy whispers Tumnus's name, and Mrs. Beaver assures her that the handkerchief has not been carried in vain. The road bends around a frozen hill, and the stone table remains hidden beyond it. A low breeze moves across the open ground, lifting threads of snow and sending them skimming over the path. The grains touch your boots, gather along the beavers' backs, and disappear into hollows between stones. The air smells of ice, bare rock, and the distant resin of trees warmed by the new light. Every sound travels farther here. You hear the careful breathing of the travelers, the small knock of Mr. Beaver's staff, and the faint brushing of Mrs. Beaver's pack against her side. Behind the ridge, a hidden stream moves beneath a crust of ice. Far in the distance, something large calls once, but the note is not a wolf's howl. The children stop briefly, listening. No one explains the sound, and the morning continues opening around you. Beyond the hill, the ground slopes towards a wide valley where scattered trees stand beneath the pale sky. At its far end, dark shapes rise from the snow, too distant to identify clearly. Mr. Beaver says that the stone table lies there, and that Aslan's return has already been announced among the creatures gathered nearby. The children look towards the valley without speaking. Peter carries the knowledge of the prophecy, Susan carries the memory of the witch's patrols, and Lucy carries Tumnus's handkerchief close to her heart. You walk beside them, following the beavers away from the shelter of the dam and towards the ancient stone. Winter remains upon the land, but it no longer possesses the whole of Narnia. Somewhere beyond the trees, Aslan waits beneath the changing light. Snow rests heavily upon the branches, yet its edges have softened during the night. Small drops gather along the dark twigs and fall into the white hollows beneath them. The air smells of cold earth, wet bark, and the faint green promise hidden beneath frozen ground. Your boots press through a crust that breaks with a quiet, brittle sound. Around you, the trees stand patiently, their trunks blackened by moisture, while narrow streams begin to move beneath the ice. In the distance, something large passes among the firs. The sound is not loud, but each measured footfall carries through the forest. You feel the deep tread of a lion before you clearly hear it, and the stillness seems to gather itself around that approach. The children continue through the woodland, following the beavers along a path that has only lately become visible. Peter walks at the front, keeping his hand near the hilt of the sword he does not yet possess. Susan turns often towards the trees, remembering how the witch's patrols moved through the snow. Lucy holds Tumnus's handkerchief close against her coat, its familiar softness protected from the damp. Edmund follows quietly, carrying the weight of his choices in the silence between his footsteps. The forest changes as you travel. Snow slips from the upper branches in soft, heavy sheets, revealing dark needles underneath. Water runs from the hollows of old trees and shines briefly where the pale light touches it. A raven calls once from a distant ridge, and the sound fades beneath the dripping branches. Somewhere beneath the thawing ground, roots loosen their grip upon the frost. The path smells of mushrooms, wet leaves, and stone newly uncovered. Your fingers feel the rough wool of your sleeves, while cold beads of water gather upon your hair. Even the wind seems less severe, moving gently between the trunks as though it has forgotten the habits of winter. You reach the crest of a low hill, and the valley opens beneath you. A broad camp lies among the trees, marked by fires, banners, and the shapes of many creatures gathered beneath the changing sky. Centaurs stand beside red shields, dryads move like slender shadows among the branches, and fauns speak in lowered voices. At the center of the camp, Aslan rests upon a rise of grass that the snow has abandoned. His mane catches the thin sunlight, and his eyes pass calmly over the children. No one speaks for a moment, because the sight of him seems to require a silence of its own. The lion rises, and the movement is slow, powerful, and entirely without strain. You hear the weight of his paws upon the ground as he comes towards you. The deep tread of a lion sounds different from any other step, carrying through the body as much as through the ear. Around the camp, creatures lower their heads or turn towards him. A warm current moves across your face, although the air remains cold, and beneath it you notice the green scent of crushed grass. The last crystals of snow fall from an ash tree nearby, touching the earth with delicate taps. Aslan greets the children, and his voice is deep enough to seem part of the land itself. Peter stands before him, attempting to speak with the steadiness expected of a king. Susan remains close to Lucy, while Edmund lowers his eyes. Aslan does not demand an explanation, and the absence of accusation gives Edmund no place to hide. Peter tells him that the prophecy is moving towards its fulfillment, though he does not yet understand what the final movement will require. The lion looks towards the east, where the witch's country lies beneath a fading veil of snow. He tells you that winter has begun to weaken because his return has been felt across Narnia. The snow may remain upon the fields, and the rivers may still carry ice, but the season imposed by the witch is no longer secure. His arrival marks the beginning of the end of her winter, though the end itself will come through danger, grief, and a law older than her power. From the lower path comes a small sleigh without bells. An elderly figure sits within it, wrapped in a deep red cloak that seems almost brown in the shadowed forest. His beard is white, and his face is grave, but the lines around his eyes hold a quiet kindness. Father Christmas has come after Aslan's return, moving through Narnia as silently as the first thaw. His arrival is not announced by music or ceremony. You see only the sleigh gliding over ground where the snow has begun to loosen. The cold air carries the smell of pine resin and damp leather around Father Christmas's sleigh. The runners make a faint scraping sound as they cross patches of ice, then pass softly through slush. His great sack rests against the wooden side, and its rough fabric shifts whenever the sleigh turns. Near the fire, newly cut branches hiss as their moisture rises into the flames. Metal glints beneath layers of cloth, each edge carefully wrapped. The children stand close enough to feel warmth on one side of their faces, while the other remains touched by the lingering frost. Father Christmas gives Peter a sword and a shield. The sword is bright and newly sharpened, its leather grip firm beneath his fingers. The shield bears a device that seems older than the camp itself, and its surface is strong without being heavy. Peter lifts it experimentally, learning the balance of both weapons. He understands that they are tools for the danger ahead, not promises that danger will spare him. The sword may defend him, and the shield may turn aside a blow, but courage will still have to live within the person who carries them. The blade gives a restrained whisper when Peter draws it from its sheath. Light travels along the metal and breaks into a pale line upon the ground. The shield smells of treated hide, ash wood, and the oil used to preserve its surface. Leather straps creak as Peter fastens them across his arm. Nearby, a whetstone lies beside a bundle of tools, its dusty grit clinging to the fingers of one of the dwarfs. The fire makes the metal warm at its center, while the outer rim of the shield retains the coldness of the morning. Susan receives a bow, a quiver of arrows, and a horn. The bow is pale wood, smooth beneath her hand, with a curve that appears gentle until she draws the string. Her arrows are straight and carefully fletched, their points dark against the snow. The horn is small enough to carry easily, yet its polished surface holds a deep, solemn color. Father Christmas tells Susan that its sound will summon help when she cannot see where help may be found. Susan runs her fingers along the bowstring, testing its tension without producing a sharp note. The arrows shift together inside their quiver, making a dry, wooden whisper. The horn rests against her coat, cool and smooth beneath the cloth. Around her, the camp smells of smoke, damp wool, and resinous branches feeding the fire. A gust moves through the trees and shakes loose a curtain of meltwater. Drops strike the shield, the bow, and the packed earth, creating separate notes within the same quiet rhythm. Lucy receives a healing cordial and a small dagger. The cordial is contained in a little bottle whose glass catches the firelight with a reddish gleam. A few drops, Father Christmas explains, may restore someone who is near death. The dagger is short, plain, and carefully made, with a handle suited to Lucy's hand. She accepts both gifts with solemn attention, knowing that healing and defense are different forms of service. The cordial may save another person, and the dagger may help her endure a close danger, yet neither can make her invulnerable. The bottle is cold enough to chill Lucy's fingers through its wrapping. Its contents move slowly when she turns it, thick and dark beneath the clear glass. The dagger's sheath is rough leather, softened at the edges by repeated handling. When Lucy draws the blade, it makes a small sound like a breath leaving a room. She places it carefully beside the cordial. Close by, thawing snow drips from a branch into a shallow bowl, while the smell of cold earth rises more strongly from the ground. Father Christmas departs as quietly as he arrived, leaving behind no ceremony except the changed faces of the children. Peter carries the sword and shield, Susan carries the bow, arrows, and horn, and Lucy protects the cordial and dagger beneath her cloak. Edmund receives no weapon, because his task is not to become someone else, but to face what he has done. Aslan watches him with an expression that is neither softness nor severity, and Edmund begins to understand that forgiveness does not erase responsibility. The camp settles after the sleigh has gone. Snow continues to withdraw from the lower branches, leaving wet needles shining like dark glass. Water threads through the firelit mud, dividing the ground into narrow channels. The children examine their gifts, feeling the weight of straps, wood, glass, and sharpened metal. Beyond the circle of warmth, the forest remains cold and uncertain. A raven lifts from a dead tree, disturbing a few remaining flakes, and the flakes melt almost as soon as they touch the ground. Aslan's followers move eastward before dawn, traveling towards the witch's camp. The children remain near the lion, guided through wooded country where the snow lies thinner with every mile. Signs of the witch's army appear in the mud: broken branches, hoofprints, and dark impressions from heavy carts. Aslan speaks little, but his presence steadies those who walk beside him. Peter keeps his shield close, Susan watches the ridges, and Lucy checks the bottle beneath her coat. The journey carries you through a land suspended between seasons. Bare branches shine with moisture, and the fields hold long strips of grey snow beneath the hedges. Wind moves over the open ground with a damp, earthy smell. In shaded places, the ice remains hard, but near the roots of trees it has become porous and fragile. The children's clothing gathers mud at the hem. Buckles knock softly against leather, arrows touch one another in their quiver, and Peter's sword shifts with a subdued metallic rhythm. News comes that Edmund has been captured by the witch's army. Her soldiers seized him during the confusion of the march and carried him towards her camp. The knowledge passes through the group like a sudden shadow. Peter wants to follow immediately, while Susan fears that haste will lead them into an ambush. Aslan listens to both, then moves forward with several of his followers. The rescue is made swiftly, through the edge of the witches' camp, where the snow lies trampled and blackened by fire. You remain among the trees as it unfolds beyond the nearest ridge. Distant voices rise and fall, followed by the muffled clash of weapons. Leather straps snap tight, hooves strike frozen ground, and branches crack beneath hurried movement. Smoke hangs low over the valley, carrying the bitter scent of pitch and damp ash. Then the sounds diminish. Figures emerge between the trunks, and Edmund walks among them, pale, exhausted, and alive. Aslan follows behind him, his paws pressing into mud softened by the thaw. Edmund is reunited with Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Aslan beside a narrow stream. Peter embraces him first, and Susan places both hands upon his shoulders. Lucy brings out the healing cordial, but Edmund's wounds are not severe enough to require it. He looks at the bottle, then at his brothers and sisters, and admits that he has acted wrongly. His words are plain and incomplete, yet they are spoken without excuse. Aslan stands nearby, allowing Edmund to tell the truth in his own time. The stream beside the camp carries thin fragments of ice around stones darkened by water. A little branch rests across the current, trembling whenever the flow touches it. The air smells of wet moss and smoke from the distant fires. Edmund's coat is stiff with dried snow, and mud has gathered along his boots. Peter's shield leans against a tree, its surface marked by a shallow scratch. Susan's bow remains strung, and Lucy's dagger lies sheathed beneath her cloak, waiting without threat. The witch arrives before the children can rest. Her army spreads across the slope, filling the spaces between the trees with black armor, pale faces, and iron weapons. In her hands, she carries the authority of the deep magic, claiming Edmund as a traitor. She says that every traitor belongs to her, and that the ancient law requires blood for betrayal. Her voice is cold, but beneath the coldness lies a need to make the law serve her rule. Around the witch's army, the ground has been trampled into a dark mixture of snow, mud, and ash. Spears stand upright like a forest of thin black trunks. Metal edges catch the weak sunlight, while leather harnesses give off a sour, animal smell. The soldiers breathe clouds into the air, and their boots grind the remaining ice beneath them. Somewhere beyond the slope, water falls from a branch with patient regularity. The sound seems strangely delicate beside the armor and weapons. Aslan tells the witch that Edmund has been claimed, but he does not allow the claim to stand. He offers himself in Edmund's place. The witch agrees, though her satisfaction is restrained, because she believes that Aslan's death will secure Edmund's punishment and preserve her rule. The terms are spoken before the gathered armies, and the children understand that a bargain has been made which they cannot prevent. Edmund is taken from the center of the dispute, while Aslan turns towards the stone table. The path to the stone table rises through a narrow pass where the thaw has exposed the old rock. Rough stone presses against the soles of Aslan's bare paws. Water runs in thin lines between the cracks, carrying small pieces of leaf and grit. The smell of cold earth grows stronger beneath the surrounding trees. No birds call from the branches. Even the wind seems to pause among the stones as the lion walks towards the ancient place associated with Narnia's law. Peter, Susan, and Lucy remain behind with the others. Aslan has told them not to follow beyond a certain point, and they obey because the moment belongs to a law older than their understanding. Susan holds the horn against her side. Lucy keeps one hand around the bottle of cordial. Peter grips the edge of his shield, feeling the leather strap cut into his palm. Edmund stands apart, looking towards the stone, unable to escape the knowledge that another has offered to bear his fate. Night comes slowly over the clearing. The remaining snow turns blue beneath the trees, and the rough surface of the stone table loses the warmth of the fading light. Frost gathers again along the edges of the exposed ground. A branch bends under thawing snow, then releases a shower of drops that fall into the darkness. The children hear the movements of the witch's army beyond the rise, though no words can be distinguished. From the stone comes a faint mineral smell, dry and ancient beneath the wet air. The witch's servants bind Aslan upon the stone table. Ropes pass around his limbs, and the knots tighten against his fur. The lion does not resist. He is led beneath the gaze of the army, where creatures gather in a widening circle. Some shout, some laugh, and some remain silent, because even hatred cannot make the scene ordinary. Aslan is humiliated before them, his mane handled roughly, his dignity treated as though it were something that could be stripped away. The ropes rasp against stone as the witch's servants pull them tight. Small fragments of grit cling to Aslan's fur and gather in the cracks beneath him. The clearing smells of frost, old rock and smoke carried from the army's fires. Susan and Lucy watch from nearby, hidden among the trees where the branches are thickest. Lucy's fingers press against the glass bottle, and Susan keeps her bow lowered. Between them and the stone table lies a narrow stretch of ground, silent, except for the occasional drip. The witch approaches with a stone knife. Its blade is pale and uneven, shaped from material older than the weapons carried by her soldiers. She raises it while Aslan lies bound upon the table. The children cannot move towards him because the terms of the deep magic hold them back, and because Aslan has accepted the exchange. The witch speaks of betrayal, punishment, and the preservation of her dominion. Aslan remains still beneath her words. The knife strikes the stillness with a brief, hard sound. It is not loud, yet it seems to travel beyond the clearing, through the forest, and over the frozen valleys. Lucy sees Aslan's body grow quiet. Susan bends forward, one hand covering her mouth, while the witch stands beside the stone table, believing that victory has finally become certain. Edmund's punishment has been secured, she thinks, and Aslan's death will preserve her rule. The moon rises over the clearing, pale behind a veil of cloud. Stone holds the cold of the night and gives it back through the air. The ropes lie slack upon the table, their fibers darkened by dampness. Smoke from the army's fires moves low across the ground, carrying the smell of burned wood and iron. Susan and Lucy remain beside the trees, unable to speak. Their tears fall without sound, disappearing into the soil before they can freeze. For a long while, nothing changes. The witch's army withdraws gradually, taking its weapons and voices into the darkness. The clearing becomes a place of silence, stone, and waiting. Lucy moves towards the table, and Susan follows with slow, uncertain steps. The rough stone beneath their hands is colder than the air. Aslan's mane lies still, and the night presses closer round him. The children stay beside him until the first grey light appears beyond the eastern trees. Lucy remembers the cordial beneath her cloak, yet she understands that this is not a wound which a few drops can heal. Susan listens for movement among the branches, but hears only water beginning to run beneath the ice. The stone table remains beneath their hands, ancient and unmoving, while the deep silence seems to reach beneath the visible lore of Narnia. Then a sound travels through the ground. It begins as a faint strain within the stone, like pressure released far beneath the earth. A crack opens across the stone table, running from one edge to the other. The noise is sudden and final, yet it carries no violence. The ancient table breaks because a deeper, older magic has entered the world, a power the witch does not understand. Morning spreads over the clearing in thin silver layers. Snow slips from the branches, and the falling drops shine briefly before vanishing into the thawing earth. Cold air moves through Lucy's damp hair and across Susan's face. Beneath their hands, the broken stone feels warmer than it had moments before. The forest smells of wet roots, crushed grass, and something clean that has no name. Somewhere beyond the trees, a lion draws breath. Aslan rises from the broken table. His body is whole, his mane bright in the early light, and his eyes hold the calm strength that the witch believed she had destroyed. Susan and Lucy step backwards, then forwards again, laughing and crying without making any sound that belongs to grief. The lion lowers his head so that Lucy can touch him. The roughness of his fur is warm beneath her fingers, and his breath moves gently against her sleeve. The deeper magic has overturned the witch's calculation. Edmund's betrayal remains a serious wrong, but the ancient law does not end with the punishment she demanded. Aslan has offered himself for the traitor, and death has not held him. The witch's claim has been answered by a power beneath the law she used, older than her throne and stronger than her winter. The stone table lies broken, while the land begins to remember spring. Beyond the clearing, drops fall from every branch. The snow retreats from the roots of the trees, uncovering small leaves pressed flat beneath the frost. Water gathers in the hollows and reflects the pale sky. Birds begin to call from distant woodland, first singly, then in uncertain pairs. The smell of cold earth deepens as the ground opens. Aslan's paws touch the rough stone, and each step carries the promise of movement through the waking land. The children leave the stone table with Aslan. Peter hears the sound of distant horns and understands that the witch's army is already moving towards battle. Susan carries her bow and horn, Lucy protects the cordial and dagger, and Edmund walks beside Peter with a changed expression. Their gifts remain useful, but none of them has become invulnerable. The danger ahead is real, the enemy is strong, and the victory of one morning does not remove the need for courage. Behind you, the broken stone table rests beneath the dripping trees. The night has passed, but its stillness remains in the cold hollows of the ground. Ahead, the valley opens towards the battle, filled with mist, thawing snow, and the first green signs of the returning season. Aslan walks at the center of the company, and the deep tread of a lion moves steadily through Narnia. The witch's winter is loosening, and the ancient land waits beneath the changing light. Susan and Lucy remain beside the broken stone table while the first grey light gathers beneath the trees. The great stone lies divided across its ancient markings, and the fragments retain the coldness of the night. For a little while, neither child speaks, because the silence seems too large for ordinary words. Then Susan hears something gentle moving through the darkness, a deep breath drawn slowly beneath the ruined table. The sound comes again, warm and immense, stirring the loose dust gathered in the cracks. Around you, the wet grass bends beneath a passing current of air, though no wind crosses the valley. Lucy turns towards the sound, and Aslan rises among the stones, as though death has been only a shadow cast upon him. His mane catches the dim light, golden at its edges and dark beneath. Susan and Lucy stand close together while the lion looks upon them. The broken stone table remains behind him, split by a force older than the witch's rule. Aslan tells them that the witch has understood only the surface of the ancient law. According to the deeper magic, when an innocent victim willingly offers himself in place of another, the stone table is reversed. The witch's claim has been cancelled by the sacrifice she believed would secure it. Death has worked backwards, and the victim who gave himself freely has returned beyond the reach of the knife. Lucy listens beside the shattered table, feeling the warmth of Aslan's breath upon her face. His words move slowly through the morning, clear as water passing over smooth stones. Susan looks at the place where Aslan had lain, where the cords and the knife had marked the darkness. Nothing remains there except a few strands of mane and pale fragments of stone. The lion lowers his head, and Susan and Lucy place their hands against his shoulders. His fur is warm, thick, and faintly damp from the night air, while the forest begins to stir around them. A thrush calls somewhere beyond the trees, and another answers from a distant slope. Snow slides from a branch with a soft collapse, revealing a narrow spray of green beneath it. Aslan tells the children that there is still work before them. The witch has gathered her creatures in a stronghold, and the living country needs every friend who can be restored. He kneels so that Susan and Lucy may climb upon his back. The movement is quiet and steady, carrying them away from the stone table towards the white walls of the witch's castle. The path descends through a valley where the snow has begun to lose its hard surface. Beneath the melting crust, dark soil appears in long, uneven patches between the roots. Aslan's paws press into the softened ground without haste. Susan holds the lion's mane, and Lucy leans forward, listening to the measured rhythm of his breathing beneath her. The castle stands ahead, black windows cut into towers of pale stone. Its walls rise from a ridge where the last snow lies in narrow shelves, sheltered from the warmth spreading through Narnia. Inside, the passages are dim and dry. Dust rests upon the floors, the steps, and the carved ledges where the witch's servants have left objects untouched for many seasons. Susan sees a fox beside a pillar, frozen in the act of turning its head. Near a stairway, a dwarf stands with one hand raised, his stone fingers holding an unfinished gesture. A faun waits beneath a broken arch, his face lowered in fear or thought. The silent figures fill the rooms, giving the castle the atmosphere of a place abandoned by time. Lucy walks behind Aslan through a chamber lined with statues. Her footsteps make small sounds against the stone, and each echo returns from a different corridor. The lion pauses before a great courtyard, enclosed by walls that block the pale morning. Statues stand beneath the open sky, covered with a fine grey powder gathered during their long enchantment. Aslan breathes upon the nearest figure. His breath moves over the statue like warm air across a window, and a tiny crack travels from the creature's shoulder to its hand. The figure shudders, bends, and falls forward onto the flagstones, no longer hard and lifeless, but blinking in astonishment. The sound of stone giving way to sudden warmth breaks the courtyard silence. Dust falls from awakened statues as one creature after another begins to move. A bear stretches its forelegs, a rabbit shakes its ears, and a centaur looks slowly towards the open gate. A stone giant becomes flesh beneath Aslan's breath, his shoulders rising as color returns to his face. The giant places one broad hand against the wall until his balance comes back. A little bird flutters from a ledge, leaving a pale mark where its body had rested. The sound of its wings passes through the courtyard and disappears above the battlements. One by one, the statues awaken. Their voices begin as hoarse murmurs, then grow into questions, names, recognitions, and quiet expressions of gratitude. Susan and Lucy watch the restored creatures gather around Aslan. Some kneel, some bow their heads, and some simply stand near him because they have not yet learned how to move freely again. The animals and beings of Narnia discover that the winter has changed while they remained stone. Their astonishment deepens when they see tender shoots appearing beside the courtyard drains. Aslan leads the company out through the castle gates. The restored creatures follow him into the valley, carrying no weapons at first, yet bringing the strength of a country returning to itself. Beyond the ridge, the sound of trumpets rises from Peter's army. Hooves strike the thawing ground, and the rhythm travels through the mist like a pulse beneath the earth. Peter commands the Narnian forces near the witch's stronghold. His armor is worn from the journey, and his sword rests firmly in his hand as he studies the dark lines gathering ahead. The Narnian army has formed across a broad slope where melting snow exposes brown grass and scattered stones. Behind the soldiers, the land brightens gradually beneath a thinning sky. Spring spreads behind the lines, though the battle has not yet begun. Green shoots appear in sheltered hollows, while drops of water fall steadily from the branches. The witches' forces move out from the stronghold in a mass of dark bodies. Wolves run along the front, Giants carry heavy clubs, and creatures of many shapes press forward beneath her banners. Their armor makes a dull, clattering sound as they cross the frozen earth. The noise mingles with snorting horses, distant horns, and the brittle breaking of ice beneath countless feet. Peter raises his sword, and the Narnian ranks advance. Trumpets sound across the valley, answered by horns from the witches' side, while the pale towers remain fixed above the confusion. The first lines meet near a low wall of ancient stones. Spears clash, shields strike against shields, and the quiet of the morning gives way to the rough movement of battle. Around the field, spring continues its patient return. Water runs through shallow channels, the air loses its sharpness, and the smell of damp soil rises beneath the smoke. Peter fights near the center, directing the army with gestures that remain visible through the drifting haze. His soldiers gather around his commands, retreating in one place and pressing forward in another. A giant breaks through the Narnian line, scattering smaller fighters across the slope. Peter turns towards it, but a centaur reaches the creature first, striking its knees with a long spear. From the castle comes the White Witch, carrying a stone knife whose edge has the pale color of old frost. She does not ride, and no guard walks beside her. The witch enters the battle with the confidence of one who believes the land itself belongs to her. Around her feet, the grass darkens, and a thin crust of ice appears upon the stones. Her power moves through the fighting ranks like sudden night. Narnian soldiers stumble as cold grips their limbs, while weapons become heavy in their hands. Aslan comes down from the ridge with Susan and Lucy behind him. The restored creatures follow in a long, uneven company, and their arrival changes the shape of the field. A bear roars beside a line of dryads, while the stone giant lifts a fallen gate and carries it aside. The creatures released from the castle move towards the struggle with their remembered courage. The witch sees Aslan and turns away from Peter's soldiers. Her stone knife catches a shaft of light, and the ice around her spreads in a narrow ring. Aslan advances across the churned ground. Snowmelt runs around his paws, reflecting the sky in broken pieces, while the witch gathers her power against him. The lion's breath in the silent courtyard has become the roar of a living country. His presence moves through the Narnian ranks, and those who had begun to falter find their feet again. Peter commands the forces nearest the stronghold, holding the center while Aslan confronts the witch. The battle opens and closes around them in waves of movement. Edmund sees the witch raise a slender wand towards the Narnian lines. Its tip shines with a cold light, and a cluster of soldiers begins to harden where they stand. He runs across the slope, pushing between wounded creatures and fallen shields. The ground is uneven beneath him, and every step sends water from the thawing soil. Edmund reaches the witch as she turns her wand towards another group. He strikes at the wand with his sword, using both hands and all the strength remaining in his tired arms. The blow breaks the witch's wand, and its fragments scatter across the wet grass. The spell above the soldiers fades, leaving them shaken but alive. The witch brings her stone knife down upon Edmund. His sword breaks during the attack, and the force of the blow throws him backwards across the stones. Edmund lies seriously wounded near the edge of the fighting. His breath comes shallowly, and his fingers close around the broken hilt as the battle passes around him. Lucy reaches Edmund with the cordial supplied by Father Christmas. She kneels in the mud, lifts his head, and gives him the medicine in careful drops. The cordial tastes sweet and sharp, carrying the clean scent of herbs and distant flowers. Color returns slowly to Edmund's face, and his breathing steadies beneath Lucy's hand. Peter sees his brother move and turns back towards the main struggle. The sight gives him new determination, though the field remains crowded with danger. The witch raises her knife again, but Aslan reaches her before the blow can fall. His paw strikes the ground beside her, sending a tremor through the frozen earth. She retreats towards the stronghold, leaving black marks where her feet pass. The remnants of her power gather around her like smoke drawn into a narrow chimney. Aslan follows across the slope. His mane moves in the changing wind, and small droplets of thawed snow cling to the fur beneath his chest. The witch casts a final spell against the Narnian army. A wall of cold rises between the opposing forces, whitening the grass and covering the fallen weapons with rime. Aslan leaps through the frozen barrier. The ice shatters around him, bright pieces spinning through the air before they melt against the ground. He meets the witch beneath the shadow of the stronghold's outer tower. Her stone knife rises once more, but Aslan closes his jaws upon the weapon and breaks it apart. The witch struggles against him with all the strength gathered from her long winter. Her face remains hard and pale, while the stone beneath her feet begins to crack. Aslan defeats the White Witch beneath the dark walls of her stronghold. His victory comes with a single overwhelming movement, and the witch falls still upon the thawing ground. The army of the witch collapses after her defeat. Wolves abandon the field, giants lower their clubs, and the creatures who served her scatter into the valleys beyond the castle. Some surrender to Peter's soldiers, while others flee into the forests. Their banners fall into the mud, and the dark shapes that carried them disappear among the melting drifts. For several moments, no one moves except the wounded and the creatures searching for their companions. The smoke thins above the field, revealing patches of blue between the clouds. Then a lark rises from the grass. Its song passes over Peter's army, the broken weapons, and the body of the witch lying beneath the wall. The snow begins to melt more quickly. Water slips beneath the roots, runs around stones, and gathers in bright threads along the lower part of the valley. Small, tender shoots appear everywhere across the slope, as though the earth has been waiting beneath a sealed door. Peter walks among the Narnian forces, speaking to those who are standing and kneeling beside those who cannot rise. His voice is calm, and the soldiers answer him with tired nods. Edmund rests beneath a tree while Lucy watches over him. The cordial continues its work, and a little warmth returns to his hands. Susan stands with Aslan at the edge of the battlefield. She can see the castle behind them, its windows empty now, its silent rooms no longer holding the country captive. The restored creatures gather near the lower slopes. They carry the dust of the castle upon their clothing and fur, but they are alive, and their voices begin to fill the morning. Aslan walks through the gathered company, touching some with his muzzle and looking steadily at others. Each creature seems to remember the moment of awakening as a separate kind of sunrise. Beyond the battlefield, streams break free from the ice. Their movement is soft beside the louder sounds of trumpets and hooves, which continue across the thawing ground. The road to Caer Paravel lies open along the eastern coast. The company begins the journey beneath a sky that grows lighter with every mile. You travel among the released creatures and the Narnian soldiers. Wet branches brush your shoulders, and the road carries the scent of leaf mold, running water, and distant salt. By afternoon, the hills show broad patches of grass. The warmth is not yet strong, but the land has turned towards the sun, and the witch's winter no longer commands it. Peter rides at the head of the column. Edmund travels more slowly, supported by friends, while Susan and Lucy remain near him beneath the clear, changing light. Aslan moves apart from the procession at times, appearing on a ridge or beside a stream. His figure remains visible in the distance, steady against the returning colors of the country. The journey continues through woods where buds swell upon the branches. Birds return to the lower boughs, and their calls join the creaking harness and the tread of feet. Last, Caer Paravel appears above the sea. Its towers stand upon a rocky coast, and the western light shines across the water beneath them. Sea air around Caer Paravel moves coolly across your face. Salt lies upon the wind, mixed with the smell of wet stone and the faint fragrance of flowers opening near the walls. The castle receives the children with music. Trumpets sound from the battlements, hooves ring upon the courtyards, and the restored creatures enter beneath newly raised banners. Within the great hall, candles burn against the afternoon dimness. The walls hold old carvings of kings and queens, and the floor shines where many feet have crossed it. Peter is crowned before the gathered country. He receives the title of High King Peter, and the crown rests upon his hair with a quiet weight. Susan follows him as Queen Susan, bearing the name Gentle. Her crown is light, and the hall reflects in its polished metal as she turns towards the assembled people. Edmund receives his crown as King Edmund, called the Just. The wound in his side is still tender, but he stands without support while the courtiers speak his new title. Lucy becomes Queen Lucy, known as the Valiant. She holds the cordial close to her robes, remembering how its small bottle carried Edmund back from the edge of death. The coronation continues beneath the sea wind. Outside, gulls circle above the roofs, and the sound of waves rises through the open windows. The four rulers govern Narnia for many years according to Narnian time. Seasons pass over Cair Paravel, and the children grow into the duties of wisdom, mercy, judgment, and courage. Peter settles disputes between distant peoples and leads hunting parties through the northern forests. Susan becomes skilled at diplomacy, and her gentle manner often prevents quarrels before they become wars. Edmund studies the laws of Narnia and listens carefully to those who have suffered under the witch. He remembers the broken sword and the medicine that restored him. Lucy visits the sick and the old, carrying remedies through villages where spring becomes summer and summer fades into autumn. Her presence is remembered in many quiet homes. The country heals beneath their reign. Roads reopen, ruined bridges are rebuilt, and the castle, once filled with statues, becomes a place where rescued creatures meet beneath living trees. At Cair Paravel, the rulers look across the sea during evenings of calm weather. The water darkens beneath the stars, and lamps appear one by one along the harbour. Time in Narnia does not resemble time in England. Years gather around the four thrones, while the memory of a wardrobe and a snowy railway remains distant and strangely close. The children become adults within the world that received them. Their voices deepen, their faces change, and their knowledge of Narnian places grows as familiar as knowledge of their own hands. Still, an older mystery waits beyond the forest. A white stag is said to pass through the eastern woods, and whoever sees it may find an unexpected path. The four rulers pursue the white stag on a morning when the leaves are bright and the air carries the smell of crushed fern. Their horses move beneath branches shining with dew. The stag keeps just ahead of them, pale between the trunks. It crosses a stream, climbs a stony bank, and disappears through a narrow opening where no road had seemed to exist. Peter follows first, with Susan, Edmund, and Lucy close behind. The passage closes around them like a fold in the forest, and the sound of Narnia fades beyond its leaves. They find themselves pressed among coats and old garments. Wardrobe dust lies beneath their hands, and the familiar wood smells dry, dark, and faintly sweet. The four rulers emerge into English daylight as children. Their crowns are gone, their clothing has changed, and the ordinary room appears smaller than the halls of Cair Paravel. Outside the wardrobe, almost no time has passed in England. The professor's house remains quiet, and the children's absence has scarcely disturbed the afternoon. English daylight enters through the windows with a plain brightness. It falls across the floorboards, the wardrobe doors, and the dust that clings to the children's sleeves. They speak together about Narnia, naming Cair Paravel, the stone table, Aslan, and the White Witch. Each name seems to preserve an entire country within a few syllables. The wardrobe stands behind them, dark and polished beneath the room's familiar air. Its hinges make no sound, and the coats hang as they had before the journey began. The children carry back no crown, no sword, and no stone from the witch's castle. Their memories remain the only visible treasure from the long reign beyond the door. The novel was published in 1950, while its internal Narnian dates are not clearly specified. Narnia has its own measure of history, and its years cannot be neatly placed beside English calendars. The year 1950 belongs to the book's world in England, while the reign of Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy belongs to the spacious time of Narnia. You stand once more in the ordinary room, where wardrobe dust settles quietly and English daylight rests upon the floor. Far away, the sea air around Cair Paravel continues moving beneath the stars. The stone table is broken, yet its story remains among the oldest memories of the land. Aslan rises again, and the deeper magic turns sacrifice into release. The statues awaken, the army gathers, and the witch's winter ends near her own stronghold. Across the valley, the thaw gives way to streams, birdsong, and grass. Edmund survives because Lucy carries the cordial supplied by Father Christmas. Peter holds the army together, and Aslan defeats the White Witch beneath the walls she believed would protect her. At Cair Paravel, 4 children become rulers, and according to Narnian time, their reign stretches across many years. Their crowns shine above the sea, while the restored country learns the shape of peace. Then a white stag draws them through the forest, beyond the long years and back towards the wardrobe. The passage carries them home as children, with almost no time having passed in England. The last light lies gently across the room. Outside, the English world remains quiet, while somewhere beyond ordinary sight, the green roads of Narnia continue beneath a brightening sky.